On the cold winter night of December 22nd, in the year of our Lord 2006, infamous director and Canadian Shawn Levy unknowingly changed the world forever by inventing gay people. He did this via the groundbreaking hit family comedy, Night at the Museum. It follows Larry Daly, a misguided man who applies to be a nighttime security guard at the American Museum of Natural History. But not everything is as it seems. Chaos ensues. On the surface, Night at the Museum is a silly movie about the value of learning from history. It's a movie that when you mention it, people take a minute and then go,
"Oh, the one with the dinosaur and Teddy Roosevelt and everything? Oh, I used to love that movie as a kid."
It's full of slapstick and bits that run way too long, and the plot holes are numerous. It received mixed and/or average reviews. But the reviews lie. The whole trilogy is a masterpiece, and there's something, just something about these movies that has me in a chokehold. So, to figure out what that is, let us take a deep dive into anything and everything Night at the Museum. And I mean everything. Just a quick disclaimer before we jump into this. First, this video is long. I know. I really enjoy talking about this trilogy, which means I want to do so in depth, which means I will be explaining the plot for 30 minutes. But I will put timestamps in the description, and each movie will be split into its own video. Really, I'm just doing this because I want to throw my thoughts into the void, and I would be more than jazzed if somebody who also enjoys these movies found this video and said,
"I would like to discuss my thoughts with another human being."
If so. Second, I am not a historian. I put very little effort into researching the historical figures in this film, especially because I know for a fact that it disregards a lot of factual information and blatantly shares misinformation anyway. Most of my knowledge comes from vague recollections of my AP US History and AP European History classes from 6 years ago, the rabbit holes I fell into when I was obsessed with these movies 7 years ago, and the Wikipedia articles I've read in the past month. Third, I am aware that, despite the way museums can be educational and helpful, they also help aid in the ideas of colonialism and Eurocentrism. They often tell the story of the white man or the white woman, and can paint inaccurate or distasteful pictures of people of color throughout history. Additionally, many of the artifacts or pieces within museums were stolen. There are plenty of other ethical issues I have with museums, which could be a whole video on its own, and while the movie can sometimes glorify museums and the problematic figures from history that reside within, that is by no means my intention with this video. So, with that said, let's jump into an overly detailed synopsis of Night at the Museum. We open on Larry Daly, our protagonist, played by Ben Stiller, to some delightful music. He walks up to his car parked on the street only to find a ticket and a boot on his tire. So he has to sprint to pick up his son Nick from school. Despite his best efforts, he runs into Nikki's teacher, Blake, who explains that Erica, Nikki's mom or Larry's ex-wife, had already picked him up. Blake also explains that it was career day at school, which leaves Larry a little hurt because Nikki didn't tell him that it was career day. Larry then has to go to Erica's to pick up Nikki, where he unfortunately runs into Dawn, Erica's new partner, played by Paul Rudd. Enter our first long, awkward bit that these movies are so fond of. Hi, it's me from the future. You can tell because my hair is slightly faded. Anyway, I thought now would be an excellent time to briefly explain the tally system. Essentially, Night at the Museum, as with literally any other movie, has a list of bits that it generally resorts to, such as uncomfortable, awkward moments that give you secondhand embarrassment. We're going to keep track of these bits in a tally chart, but it's important to note that these are neither good nor bad. I love the awkward bits. I think they're a good thing. Others may not. It's just a little tracking system because I think data is interesting. They can't find anything to talk about except the weather, and Don's like,
Chilly, chilly. Willie the penguin.
Larry then asks if Nikki would like queens, and Erica asks if he's getting evicted again, suggesting maybe Nick shouldn't stay with him, or at least until he finds something stable. We then cut to Nick's hockey game where he falls down, so Larry runs onto the ice, much to the annoyance of everyone in the vicinity. He asks Nick if he's okay, and then mentions quietly that the left defenseman is a weak skater, so he should play to that. Larry then retreats back to his seat, and in typical 2006 humor fashion, gets hit in the face with a puck, which Shawn Levy actually admitted was a low joke. After hockey, the boys are walking back, and Nikki tells Larry that he actually doesn't want to be a hockey player anymore. He wants to be a bond trader, like Dawn. You know, like at least as a fallback. And Larry's like, what the f***, you're too young to have a fallback. Nikki then confronts Larry about the fact that he's moving again, and how his mom says Larry has all these different schemes. Larry insists that his moment is coming soon though, he can just feel it. And Nikki says something which I think is very important to the core of this movie, which is,
What if you're wrong? And you're just an ordinary guy who should get a job.
woof. We cut to the employment agency where Larry talks to Debbie, played by Ben Stiller's mom, and she says, in all my years at the agency, I have never seen a resume quite like yours. And he's like, all right. And she's like, that wasn't a compliment. She asks about his invention, the snapper, which leads to another conversation about how it's just the clapper, and then they argue about this for an eternity. Larry begs her for a job, and she reluctantly offers him one, but she warns that they have turned down everyone she sent. He shows up to the address, and it's the American Museum of Natural History. He speaks to the docent, or guide, Rebecca, and tries to make light conversation while waiting for his interview. Then the museum director enters, Dr. McPhee. I'm not going to get into it right now, but he is the funniest character in this whole trilogy, despite not having any relevance whatsoever, and despite being played by Ricky Gervais.
I mean, this is a museum, not a...
So let's just say every time he appears on screen, we'll add a mark to the awkward bit tally. Larry travels to what I presume is the basement to do his interview, and after ringing the bell, an old guard pops his head out. Cecil Fredericks, played by Dick Van Dyke. We meet the other two guards, Gus and Reginald. Gus, played by Mickey Rooney, immediately yells, "Where is he? I'll beat him with my fists!" And then they all explain that the museum is downsizing, or in other words, firing the 3 old guards and hiring a new one. Larry, learning that this is a nighttime security guard position, starts to have doubts. Cecil then explains very seriously that this is the most important position in the museum, and they hire Larry immediately. Once Larry walks away, we get an ominous shot of the 3 guards, and Reginald asks, "Do you really think he's the one?" And Cecil says, "Oh yes, he's the one." As Larry waits for Cecil to give him a tour, the lights shut off, and what looks to be an exhibit sneaks up behind him. What's interesting though is that we know from the trailer and from the description of the movie and from general knowledge, because it's 2022 and the movie came out in 2006, that the exhibits come to life. Like, this isn't necessarily a shock to us. But what we don't know is what the exhibits do when they come to life, besides presumably cause chaos. However, it's just Cecil in a costume, which I think is the movie's way of saying, we know that you know, but you're going to have to wait a little longer for that part. Don't be so eager. Cecil takes Larry on the tour, and lucky us, 2 more bits are established on this tour. The first is jump scares, and not like jump scares for the audience, but jump scares for the characters within the film. Like Cecil puts on that costume and scares Larry on purpose. The second bit is weird, and I don't know if it's a Dick Van Dyke thing or maybe an inside joke, and I'm not gonna look into it beyond a brief Google search, but it's the phrase,
"Moving on."
Cecil says it in almost the exact same intonation twice on this tour alone, so. If anyone knows what that means, please tell me. Really, the only important part of this tour is that we are introduced to the Tablet of Akhmun-Ra, which is super cool, super valuable, and a little mysterious. We also get some naive comments from Larry like, "Oh, I love monkeys," or calling the dioramas cute. Just you wait, buddy.
Moving on.
We cut to Larry's apartment where he's hanging up his uniform, and he calls Erica to tell her that he got a job at the Museum of Natural History. And she's like, "Oh, Larry, that's great." We then cut back to the museum where Cecil hands him his keys and his torch and/or flashlight. He suggests that he throw on some lights and instructs him to follow the instruction manual. Do them in order, do them all, and do them quick.
And the most important thing of all to remember, don't let anything in or out.
And of course, we cannot end this all without another.
Moving on.
Larry immediately disregards the instructions, d***ing around at the front desk, playing with the god mic, you know.
Monday! Monster truck rally!
And then he falls asleep. He eventually rolls over off the chair, which wakes him up, and he heads to the restroom. He pauses, though, because something is off. Oh yeah, the giant T-Rex skeleton at the front of the museum, it's gone. Like, just completely gone. He thinks it's another one of those classic Cecil pranks, but he rounds the corner to find the T-Rex, Rexy, drinking from the water fountain, the water falling through the bones onto the ground. He screams and sprints as Rexy chases after him, pushing on the doors and yelling at them to revolve, but they're locked. So he hides under the desk and calls Cecil, who's at a retirement party having the absolute time of his life. Larry's like, the dinosaur's alive! And Cecil's like singing Tequila, not even paying attention, and he's like, read the instructions, it explains everything. Bye. Larry reads the instructions. 1. Throw the bone. What bone? Rexy drops what looks to be a giant rib in front of him. So Larry cautiously throws it and then sprints in the other direction, only to have Rexy cut him off again. He soon realizes, though, Rexy's just a dog. He just wants to play fetch. So he throws it again, and Rexy chases after it again, but this time he knocks Larry with his tail, which sends him flying through the air onto the stairs, which certainly should have killed him. Larry looks up to hear an elephant trumpet, followed by so many animals running into the lobby. Freaking out, he walks by some cavemen who are also alive, and then by the famous Easter Island head that we all know and love, the one that shaped a generation for years to come. Hey Dum-Dum, you give me gum-gum. And Larry's like, I give you gum-gum? And this goes on for a minute, not long enough to be considered a bit, but the Easter Island head ends with, oh, you in trouble, Dum-Dum. You better run from Attila the Hun-Hun. And right on cue, Attila the f***ing Hun rounds the corner chasing Larry, so Larry runs to the elevator. Attila swings his axe and wedges the doors open enough so he can stick his head in, but the elevator continues moving, so he has to force his head out. Which, this has always bothered me because, like, elevators don't do that.
They would open!
In the elevator, Larry's like, what is happening? So he glances at the instructions again. He enters another room with a glass case containing Lewis and Clark and Sacagawea. He asks Sacagawea what's going on, but they can't hear each other through the glass, so he thinks, clearly she's deaf. He hears the Huns in the distance, so he's like, gotta go, Huns. But suddenly some stuffed life-size Civil War puppets come to life and start shooting at each other with Larry caught in the middle. Again, another instance where Larry should be dead. But yeah, they're like shooting at each other and like bleeding out stuffing and everything. Finally, he looks at number 2 on the instructions. Lock up the lions or they'll eat you. He runs into a bronze figure played by the famous Italian actor Pier Francesco Favino, and he asks about the lion thing, but the figure shouts back in Italian. The joke is that it's Christopher Columbus, but Larry has no idea, so he calls him various names throughout the movie, this time Galileo. I'd like to think this is some kind of joke having to do with the producer of the movie being Chris Columbus, but I have no way to prove that. I also like how this implies that all white explorers look the same. As he's walking to the African mammals room, an elephant shoves him into the room, so he quickly locks the door behind him to get away from the elephant. Before he notices the lions waking up. He bolts to the other door on the other side of the room, but before he can lock it, he notices a monkey named Dexter stole his keys. He looks at the instructions. 3. Double check your belt. The monkey probably stole your keys. He tries politely reasoning with Dexter, but Dexter bites his nose and pees on him. Which, like, Dexter peeing on things is a thing that happens more than once. And he rips up the instructions. Larry gets the keys back, though. He stops for a rest in the diorama room, where a little tiny Mayan approaches him on the headrest of the bench and shoots a poison dart at his lip, which swells up. Seeing he's about to get shot with 1,000,000 darts, he puts his hand up and says,
Oh, that.
Unfortunately, the Western diorama people have tied up his legs, so he falls into the Western exhibit where they tie him up further. You know, like Gulliver's Travels. The mayor gives a speech about being locked up in boxes, and Jedediah the cowboy, played by Owen Wilson, says a bunch of silly things like, fire up the iron horse, boys, or
Split his head like a watermelon!
Which means launch a train at Larry's head, but it bounces off because it's a small model train. Larry breaks free of his restraints, only to find a whole-ass Roman army at his feet full of tiny 2-inch Romans, and they launch tiny catapults of flaming something at him. Jedediah and the leader of the Roman army, Octavius, argue about who gets to defeat the giant. But just in time, Teddy Roosevelt rides up on his horse to save the day and says, "Take the hand, son." I won't get into Teddy's character too much right now, but essentially he tells Larry he'll only answer one question because men have to look inward to find answers and whatever. So Larry asks, isn't everything in this museum supposed to be,
Dead?
So Teddy takes Larry to the temple of Akhmun-Ra. He explains that the tablet of Akhmun-Ra, along with the pharaoh himself, was brought here 54 years ago, and every night since, everything in the museum has come to life. We also hear Akhmun-Ra screaming and banging on his casket this whole time, but Teddy's like, you've been in there 54 years, you're not getting out tonight. Larry asks what he's supposed to do, and Teddy reiterates what Cecil said about the night watchman being the most important position in the museum, because if anything is on the outside when the sun rises, they will turn to dust. Teddy offers to help Larry restore order only tonight, but of course we can't end this scene without Teddy scaring Larry by screaming. We cut to later that night. Order is presumably restored, and Larry walks up to Teddy, who is looking at Sacagawea through binoculars. Larry informs Teddy that he will not be coming back tomorrow night, and Teddy drops the quote, "Some men are born great, Lawrence. Others have greatness thrust upon them." He asks Larry what he did before this, and Larry tries to explain the snapper, but he cuts him off, asking if he gave up on that too. He hops up onto his horse to prepare for dawn, but not before he can scare Larry. Again. Suddenly, Jedediah pops out of Larry's pocket and is like, say hello to your little friend. And Larry's like, this is so not worth $11.50 an hour. Which I looked it up, minimum wage in New York in 2006 was $6.75 an hour.
So $11.50 has to be kind of decent, right? Like maybe not for a full-grown adult in New York, but I don't really know.
We watch everything freeze in place as dawn arrives, and then later that morning, the old guards walk in, only to have Larry jump out and scare them. Larry's like, oh, you don't like being surprised? Like how you surprised me with the fact that everything in the museum comes to life? And he quits. However, on his way out of the museum, he sees Nikki with Don, who's taking him to school. Don's like, maybe your dad could give you a cool VIP tour. And Nikki's like, yeah, it's so cool that you're working here. But Larry's like, we're pretty slammed this morning, but I promise some other time. He immediately turns around and tells the guards that he'll give it one more night. Unfortunately, Dr. McPhee, the museum director, shows up, clearly upset. He leads Larry to the diorama room where Octavius is frozen in the stockades of the Wild West with Jedediah looking on smugly. McPhee asks Larry to explain, and he does, saying, I'm just spitballing here, but I think the Roman dude got a little cocky and climbed into the Wild West, wanting to take their land. McPhee is not amused, but he tells him not to let it happen again.
Wow! Let's all laugh at me, the comedy night guard.
Cecil recommends Larry brush up on his history to help with the job, so Larry follows a school tour around led by the docent Rebecca. He says a bunch of dumb stuff like, was Sacagawea deaf because she seems a bit unresponsive, or laughing when Rebecca calls the capuchin monkey, i.e. Dexter, generous and loving. It's kind of painful to watch, but like in a really funny way. Rebecca pulls him aside and is like, what's wrong with you? And Larry explains that he just wants to learn more about what he's guarding. And then he asks if he can get her a cup of coffee so they can talk about it, purely as colleagues. We come to learn that Rebecca has been writing a 900-page book on Sacagawea for 4 years. It's like her thing. Kind of like how Night at the Museum is my thing. We then see a montage of Larry learning stuff from the library with books and computers and such. Later that night, the guards inform Larry that they're clocking out for the last time, and Larry's worried that he'll need them or something won't work out, but they assure him he'll be fine. Reginald seems to get emotional, so they all give him a minute alone. But once he's actually alone, his face hardens and he takes an imprint of a key that was in Larry's pocket. Even later that night, Larry is ready. He ties Rexy's rib to a remote control car, he gives the cavemen a lighter, he gives the Easter Island head Gum Gum, he uses a mitt to block the darts as he closes the diorama, and he attaches baby keys to his hip, so when Dexter steals them, he still has the real keys. He teases Dexter about this for an unnecessary amount of time.
Those are baby keys for a little baby. So have fun playing with your baby keys, little baby monkey. Maybe tomorrow night I'll bring you a little baby diaper so you can go poo-poo with it. Then I'll change it for you. And then I'll give you a little tickle because you're a cute little baby. Well, you...
Just before he closes the Roman and Wild West dioramas, Larry notices both sides trying to break through the same wall. He asks what they're doing, and Octavius says, "We expand or we die." Larry tries to explain that they're just gonna hit a wall, but neither is listening, so he picks up Octavius and Jedediah, who does not like to be manhandled, and he makes them sort of talk it out. Jedediah explains what being a man is, and Larry explains what feelings are, and says they have the whole room to run around in if they behave. The figurines are stunned, so obviously they agree. Larry runs into Teddy, who is once again spying on Sacagawea. Larry asks if Teddy's checking her out, and Teddy scoffs at the idea. Larry tells him to just say hi, and though he tries, he freaks out and bails. We cut to a very brief scene of somebody planting museum artifacts in Larry's apartment. And I don't know if I'm incredibly stupid, but it took me so long to figure out what was happening here. Because one, it's a scene in the dark, and I hate scenes in the dark because you can't see anything. Two, it really just looks like some guy putting museum stuff somewhere. And it's a 10-second long clip in the middle of all of this action. In fact, director Sean Levy even admitted he didn't even know if he wanted this scene in the movie, like it was almost cut. And I'm not saying it's not an important scene, but anyway. Larry moves on to show Attila some magic, because he read that Attila likes magic. Attila's super impressed until one trick goes wrong, so he orders his men to rip Larry's limbs apart, obviously. Before he can, an elephant storms into the lobby despite Larry locking up, which scares the Huns away. Turns out, Dexter still managed to steal the keys, and now everything is chaos again. The miniatures are fighting, the cavemen have abused the fire, and everything is everywhere. While Larry's putting out fires with an extinguisher, Dexter opens a window somewhere away from the action. Meanwhile, the cavemen are fascinated with the extinguisher foam. One eats it, another throws it at Larry, but Larry finds Dexter and chases him. He corners him and demands the keys back. Dexter slaps Larry. Larry slaps Dexter back. This goes on for too long. Teddy rounds the corner to see this, lecturing Larry and asking Dexter gently for the keys back. Larry's furious, so he tells Teddy to take over since he has it so under control. Teddy tries to drop the greatness quote again, but Larry's like, yeah, I know, you said that yesterday. Some of us are just ordinary. While this is happening, a caveman has escaped through the window that Dexter opened. As Larry's storming out, he notices the open window. He looks out to see both the caveman and the sun rising, so he sprints to the front door, but it's too late. The caveman looks at Larry as the sun rises and he turns to dust. It's a brutal moment where Larry realizes the responsibility he has to these exhibits. He notices the keys frozen in Teddy's hand and takes them back. The next morning, Nikki and a couple of friends walk into the museum. Nikki's like, I'm telling you, my dad's gonna hook us up. But they hear Dr. McPhee yelling at Larry, probably about a lot of different things, but we hear,
Phone in the Neanderthal display.
and Larry promises to clean it up, but McPhee says,
Okay, don't bother. You're fired.
Nikki and Co catch all of this, and Nikki's friends are like, I don't think we're getting that tour. Your dad got canned, dude. You know, how children speak. Larry pleads with Dr. McPhee for one more night, and the museum director reluctantly agrees. We cut to Larry showing up at Erica's asking what's wrong, and she tells him to ask Nikki. Nikki explains what he saw, and Larry's like, no, I didn't get fired. It's hard to explain. Come with me to work tonight. Erica doesn't like this idea, but they all eventually agree. Later that evening, Larry's at the museum with Nick hiding in the security room, and he runs into Rebecca while he's making his rounds before nightfall. He tells her she has to leave, museum rules, and then he asks how her dissertation is going. To which she replies she's giving up, I guess? You know, giving up on her 900-page essay that she spent 4 years on because she can't get into Sacagawea's head, so it's
useless.
Rebecca leaves, but before she can make it out the door, Larry catches up with her, explaining how the museum comes to life, and it's super cool, and she could talk to Sacagawea. Rebecca's like, yeah, really cool. Make fun of the history geek. And she storms out. Later, Nikki's sitting on the front desk just before everything's supposed to come to life. Larry's like, you see this dinosaur? Well, I call him Rexy, and he's about to come to life in 5, 4, 3, 2. Nothing. Say hello to Rexy. Still nothing. Nikki thinks Larry is crazy and is thoroughly both disappointed and embarrassed, but Larry gets really serious and insists that there's something wrong with the tablet. Nikki's like, now there's a tablet? So they go to the Temple of Akhman-Ra and it is in fact missing. Larry says he thinks someone stole it and Nikki's like, yeah, right, okay. As Nikki attempts to leave, they run into Cecil, Reginald, and Gus in the basement attempting to steal museum artifacts. Cecil tells Nikki that Larry is lying and crazy and that he actually did get fired this morning. Larry tells Nikki that he has to turn the middle piece on the tablet, because Larry somehow intuitively knows that this will activate the tablet, I guess? Nikki is torn, but in the end he turns the middle piece. There's a magic glow and everything comes to life. However, the guards seem to beef up too. Nikki runs away as the guards beat up Larry, and they explain that the tablet actually gave them new life at night too, so They all go and search for Nikki, who has hidden himself in Akhman-Ra's temple. Larry eventually catches up, but the guards throw him in the temple as well and lock him in there. Meanwhile, Dexter's having an absolute field day, opening everything and letting everything out. Larry calls for Teddy, who rides up on his horse, much to the surprise of Nikki. He asks for help, but Teddy says, "Can't do it, son, this is your moment." And Larry's like, "Yeah, I can't either. I didn't build the Panama Canal and all that other stuff like you." Teddy takes a moment and says, "I didn't do any of those things. Teddy Roosevelt did. I was built in a mannequin factory in Poughkeepsie."
I'm made of wax, Larry. What are you made of?
I didn't know Teddy listened to A Day to Remember. Teddy rides off as the jackals approach them, clearly intending to kill them to protect Akhman Ra. Larry, in a last-ditch effort, has Nikki help him open the sarcophagus. A creepy mummy sits up, and everyone is on the edge of their seats. And I'm sure everyone from my generation remembers this moment from our childhood, when the mummy unwraps his bandages and we all clutch our pearls at the sight of a gorgeous Rami Malek.
You would not believe how stuffy it is in there.
And they're like, "You speak English?" And he's like, "I went to Cambridge." He says, "I am Akhman Ra, fourth king of the fourth king, ruler of the land of my fathers." And Larry's like,
I am Larry, son of Milton, and this is my son, Nick, and we hail from Brooklyn.
and then there's this long, awkward bit about custody agreements. Akhman Ra says, "Larry, Nick, guardians of Brooklyn, I am forever in your debt. Now bestow upon me my tablet so that I can blah 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 whatever. Obviously, they don't have it. The next shot is of the jackals kicking down the gate so that they can all escape. They run out to find everything in absolute chaos, and everyone in the museum is in an all-out brawl. Suddenly, the Huns round the corner screaming, but Larry doesn't back down. They scream at each other in a language that is not real and honestly quite racist, as it's trying to emulate Mongolian, I think. Akhman Ra's like, "Pardon me, Larry, I speak Hun." He says he wants to rip you apart. Larry tries to reason with Attila, playing to his childhood trauma. He says, "Maybe somebody ripped you a long time ago, in here. They ripped the love right out, didn't they?" Attila starts to cry, they hug, and Larry sings him a lullaby in this racist fake language, and then points to another Hun and says, "You're next." The museum is still in chaos, but when the Easter Island head gets everyone's attention, Larry gives a really good speech to unite everyone. He introduces Akhman Ra and explains the tablet and how it brings everyone to life every night, but the old guard stole it. He assigns everyone things to do, but Jedediah doesn't want to work with Toga Boy, and Octavius says Romans work alone. Larry explains the importance of working together and is like, "You're both strong leaders who want what's best for your people." Or Civil War guys, "You're brothers. North wins, slavery's bad."
Sorry.
Without the tablet, all of this goes away, so we have to work together. Who's with me? Everyone cheers and goes their separate ways. Gus and Reginald are stopped easily by different exhibits, and Cecil gets hit with a giant blast of water from the blue whale. Jedediah and Octavius go to take out the tires of the van with a spear. The air is super strong coming out of the tires, so all of the miniature men start to fly away, which I think an actor in this stunt actually broke some bones in real life. But anyway, we have this zoom out gag in every single movie where we're really close in on the intense action, and then we zoom out to a wide shot where it looks like nothing is happening, showing how insignificant the situation actually is. Octavius yells for Jedediah to save himself, but Jedediah yells,
I ain't quitting you!
We still see Cecil drive away in the car, so they need help tracking him. Larry breaks Sacagawea out of her case, and she goes to help. She says he went east, lost control, and crashed, but then he left the wagon and came back. And they're like, "How did you know that?" And she just points at the van that crashed. Just then, Cecil comes flying out on a horse and buggy situation, yelling at Sacagawea to move. At the last second, Teddy pushes Sacagawea out of the way, and she's like, "You saved me." And he's like, "You're worth saving, my dear." We zoom out to see Teddy fully cut in half, but he's like, "Relax, I'm literally all good, I'm wax." Larry decides to take Teddy's horse, followed by Jedediah and Octavius in the remote control car, followed by Akhman Ra and Nikki on Rexy. They chase Cecil, who once again says,
Moving on!
Meanwhile, Sacagawea stays behind to fix Teddy. Jedediah and Octavius get cut off by Cecil's cart, having to make a sharp turn and crashing the car in a massive explosion. Everyone stops for a moment of silence. They resume the chase, but Cecil says the horses that he's on will only stop for one word, and Larry's like, "You mean a word like Dakota?" The horses stop fast and Cecil flies off. Larry tells Attila to take him back, but says no limb ripping. Attila says, "Mikaka?" And Larry says, "Makikaka." Which, the word Makikaka is in Urban Dictionary, and also Google Docs tried to correct me on the spelling of it when I was typing this up. Who said this movie doesn't have a global impact? Also, Larry gets his own
Moving on.
Achman-Ra reads the tablet, reciting a command that will get everyone to go back to the museum. Rebecca, who's currently in a taxi, sees all of the exhibits walking back, and she smiles. Back at the museum, they're counting everyone to make sure that they're all there, but of course we can't go without Dexter slapping Larry one last time, at least for this movie. Rebecca shows up, Larry introduces her to Sacagawea, and she's like, "Oh my god, I'm a big fan," and Sacagawea asks her what she'd like to know. They walk off, and pretty much everyone has come back except for two. Larry says, "We lost a couple of good men out there tonight," referring to Jedediah and Octavius. But then Nick says, "Dad, look." And Jedediah and Octavius are back, walking towards the camera, beat up and dirty, but definitely alive. The museum is still an absolute train wreck, and Larry says he doesn't know if he can talk his way out of this one. Teddy says, "If that is the case, farewell, Lawrence. Nick, your father is a great man." And Nick says, "I know." Yeah! The next morning, Dr. McPhee shows Larry the news. The story is covering cave paintings in the subway, T-Rex tracks in the snow, and cavemen on the roof last night. McPhee asks for an explanation, and Larry's like, "Nope, got nothing." McPhee insists that he walk Larry out, but when they get to the lobby, it is packed full of people. Without another word, McPhee hands Larry back his keys and flashlight. We cut to another career day at Nick's school because I guess they had two? Unless it's like a 2-day situation and they were separated by a couple of days, or it's next year, I don't know. Anyway, Nikki introduces Larry, who asks if anyone's been to the Museum of Natural History, because that's where history comes alive. We reach our last scene. It's a dance party. The museum exhibits are having the time of their life. September by Earth, Wind & Fire is playing, and Larry swings his flashlight, snaps, the flashlight shuts off, you know, like the snapper, and blackout. Oh, and also there's this fun little mid-credit scene of the guards dancing and cleaning. Okay, that was a lot.
Moving on.
For real though, let's talk about these characters because oh boy are there plenty, and oh boy is there a lot to talk about. Plus, every actor in this movie is so sexy, like so gorgeous. Except you.
I am, Larry, son of Milton.
I think it's best to start off with our main man, Larry Daly. I love him so much. Also, talk about casting Ben Stiller as an everyman. It just works so well. He embodies the essence of Larry perfectly, and that essence is just a guy. Mwah. In the beginning of the film, we see a man who can't seem to keep an apartment or hold a job, and he's generally painted to be lazy, unmotivated, and sometimes selfish. The first scene is him getting a parking ticket because he took a bag and put it over a meter and wrote "broken" on it. He's so late to pick up Nikki from school to the point that Erica has to come get him. He completely disregards the instructions in the museum, and he gives up very, very easily, quitting after his second night at the museum. But we like him. We can't root against him, because despite all of these flaws, he's still a good guy. He's just a dreamer. Larry's never intentionally a bad person, he just has this idea that he's built for something greater, something grander than all of this, and I think we can all relate to that. We see this with all of his inventions, or as Erica calls them, schemes. She asks him about his virtual reality driving range idea with a tone of sarcasm in her voice. There's also the Snapper and its umbrella corporation Snaptime Industries, which is brought up a lot. And side note, the Snapper's kind of silly, yeah, but it did sell 800 units in its first year of production, according to the Junior Novelization. And virtual reality driving range? Larry's ahead of his time. I mean, to quote the book, Larry had vision, he had imagination, all he needed was money. Yeah, he's dishonest sometimes, he's snarky sometimes, but Larry's biggest flaw is this feeling that he's made for more. Because of this, he's very short-sighted and impatient, which causes him to lose steam easily. The virtual reality driving range didn't work out? Must not have been my moment. Next. Larry yells at the exhibits, especially Dexter, and loses his temper repeatedly. He tries to continue what the old guards did, lock everyone up to avoid hassle because he doesn't have time for this. He's better than this job. He has more important things to focus on. When he studies up on the exhibits, it's not because he's doing it for them, but it's to make his life easier. There's a point where Teddy advises Larry, saying,
If you could teach the inhabitants to get along, they wouldn't need to be locked up night after night.
But that's a lot of work, though. And once again, Larry doesn't have time for that. Larry doesn't have time to be some night guard. It's just a survival job. Looking at this through a 2022 lens, though, I do feel like it's a little easier to be more sympathetic with Larry. He's just a guy who wants to make his mark on the world, and he's got some solid ideas. He's just having trouble finding his footing. I think we understand better now that we don't always control the circumstances we're in, and the idea of succumbing to the pressure of becoming a cog in the capitalist machine is nauseating. We don't want to work to have the right to live or to be happy. We do, however, have to put work in on ourselves and in our relationships. I think it's a solid goal to want to be the best person we can be, not only for ourselves, but for those we love. This means Erica and Nikki and also all of the exhibits. We know Larry loves his family. He loves Erica, maybe not romantically anymore, but he still cares for her, and he really loves Nikki. And the cool thing is, they love him back. They want Larry to have this goal. They want him to want to be the best Larry Daly he can be. They don't berate him, they don't scold him. Erica's not a bitch ex-wife. They genuinely care for him. Erica only becomes defensive when Nikki is involved because obviously she wants what's good for her son. And she doesn't say, "I don't want Nikki to stay with you anymore." She says, "Maybe Nikki should stay with me for the time being while you find somewhere to live so that Nikki has stability in his rapidly changing childhood." Nick trusts his dad time and time again. It's true that Larry lets him down, but Nikki knows that his dad is a good person who's just trying to be a good dad and that he really loves Nikki. That's why Nick is comfortable enough to bring up his concerns with the living situation and with Larry's job situation. It's why he eventually follows his dad to work. It's why he turns the middle piece on the tablet. In fact, the only significant people in the movie who think Larry is truly stupid and lazy are the old guards, who are the literal villains of the movie. They take advantage of Larry's exterior appearance. He's low on money, he can't afford rent or parking tickets, he can't hold a job. They use this against him when they plant museum artifacts in his apartment because he'll be easy to frame. When Reginald asks Cecil if Larry's the one, Cecil replies, "Oh yes, he's the one." This isn't because they think Larry's qualified, it's because they think he's wholly unqualified. But Larry proves them wrong. Up until that point, though, the museum exhibits have brought out the absolute worst in Larry. His impatience and anger lead him to hand over the keys to Teddy on the second night, but in his blind rage, he doesn't notice the caveman escaping. Once he does, it's too late. The caveman turns to dust in the sunlight. And like we said earlier, it's a very brutal moment. But it's only brutal because we've seen that Larry has a heart. He cares. It's important that this happens because Larry finally is able to see the worst of himself. And I think it's this moment that really defines his low point. So the only thing left to do is to be better. Not just for himself, but for these people he's been tasked to protect. He fully realizes the weight of the position he has in the museum, and with this new mindset, he's able to rally everyone on the night that the tablet gets stolen, get them all on the same side, and create a fun, safe environment that these exhibits can all coexist in. It's something they haven't had since the first night that they came back to life. And this is no longer to Larry's benefit. It would be so much easier for him if these exhibits did not come to life every night, but he's learned compassion and selflessness and teamwork. We'll explore the theme of greatness a little more later, but Larry learns that greatness isn't one thing. This job brought out the worst in him, but it also brought out the very best in him once he learns what he's capable of. With just a little bit of work, he's able to live up to his potential, and Nikki sees it too.
Nick, your father's a great man.
I know.
The way Larry absolutely beams when Teddy calls him great and Nick says, "I know." You can feel the joy emanating off of him. His smile is contagious because Nikki sees it. Larry is a great man.
Theodore Roosevelt, 26th President of these United States of America, at your service.
Next, I want to talk about Teddy Roosevelt, the 26th President of these United States, played by the great Robin Williams. Pardon my French, but holy shit, Robin Williams was the perfect actor for this role. The way he embodies Teddy Roosevelt and even looks like him a little bit. Like, regardless of your feelings on the actual historical figure, because I have plenty of them, Robin Williams brings so much depth to the character and makes him so charming and warm, you can't help but love him. That being said, Teddy Roosevelt did a lot of good things and also a lot of bad things as president. I don't want to glorify the man himself, but rather talk about this interesting character that Robin Williams has brought to life. What's interesting is that the movie really pulls from the rugged individualism, pull yourself up by your bootstraps aspect of Roosevelt. And there absolutely is some essence of truth to that statement, especially with Larry, who has lost his way. But I also think we can look at this critically and understand that not everyone is afforded the same opportunities in life. Many groups start their journey with a major disadvantage. Not everyone is able to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, and we even see that Larry needs help throughout the movie. As long as we understand this, I think we can continue to enjoy Teddy as a character. And yeah, Teddy is a major force in this movie. He's the calm in the storm. The movie is filled with so many characters that are larger than life, so crazy that it's good to have someone with a level head. Because our protagonist, Larry, doesn't have that. He may not be one of the exhibits, but Larry is just as chaotic as some of the exhibits. Teddy is there to pick up the slack and keep order when Larry fails at his job, despite the fact that he shouldn't have to. He should be able to experience the museum with the rest of the exhibits. We just went through Larry's character arc, and it's true that he has a lot of self-discovery, but I don't think he could have gotten to the point he did without Teddy. And that's okay! Sometimes we need an external force. We need a little shove to get us going in the right direction. Like I said, we'll talk about greatness a little bit later, but Teddy's the character who sort of carries this theme throughout the movie. Because, at least according to the movie, Teddy Roosevelt was great. He was a great president, a great man. While Larry's searching for his own greatness, he has this massive historical figure right in front of him as a good example.
Some men are born great. Others have greatness thrust upon them.
Side note, I know, and the movie knows, that this is not an actual Theodore Roosevelt quote. Please bear with us. Teddy is someone who the movie paints as a man born great. It is effortless for him to be a good person. Larry, on the other hand, has greatness thrust upon him. In this way, Teddy could almost be classified as the wise mentor archetype. The Obi-Wan, the Gandalf. Almost. Teddy is also very, very interesting as a key insight as to what these museum exhibits have going through their heads. These movies are super vague with their world-building rules, including whether the exhibits know they're museum exhibits or not. With Teddy, we're sort of able to figure that out. Clearly, he knows he's an exhibit. It's stated multiple times through his dialogue and actions. But despite it being 50 plus years, we see it's still something he's trying to grapple with and is even confused by sometimes. He puts on this facade of bravery and gusto, and don't get me wrong, he is brave. He hunts a woolly mammoth throughout the museum every goddamn night. But we see him spy on Sacagawea from far away, scared to say a word to her. When Larry's like, "I'm not brave like you, I didn't build the Panama Canal like you," we see Teddy really struggle with this for a minute. He's facing his reality as a wax figure. He tells Larry he didn't do those things, Teddy Roosevelt did. I'm not even brave enough to tell that beautiful girl I love her. This great man, the great Theodore Roosevelt, has insecurities. And I think that's a really interesting detail that I'm glad the movie decided to cover. Anyway, this character is so fun. He's got depth, he's got complexity, but he's also just a fun stereotype of the good old American man. He calls Larry Lawrence, he's too rough sometimes, and he speaks in motivational quotes. Any fool can follow instructions. You need to follow your heart, son. Cool guy.
Oh, Sacagawea! You're Sacagawea?
The glass. I can't.
Okay, let's talk about Sacagawea. I think it's pretty clear that these movies are not good to women, and Sacagawea is no exception. Unfortunately, her character is based solely on her usefulness to men. You could make the argument that this is how we remember her from history, and we don't have much else. She's remembered as the Shoshone woman who guided Lewis and Clark on their expedition. She's remembered as the woman who, as a child, was sold and forced into marriage with this guy at just 13. At 16, she became pregnant with their first child and was brought along as a guide and interpreter when Lewis and Clark hired her husband. Sacagawea is generally only remembered in relation to the men she was surrounded by, so it makes sense that this is what the movie pulls from. However, Night at the Museum takes so many liberties with its exhibits. They change stuff around to fit the narrative all the time, even with Sacagawea herself. They keep insisting that she was a tracker, which helps the other characters throughout the trilogy, but she wasn't even a tracker in real life. It's interesting how hypocritical the movie is when it comes to this character. I think they tried to go the feminist route, but didn't fully commit because it's 2006. Because they show Lewis and Clark arguing the whole time in the glass case with her, and they imply that she does not want to help them or be around them. They portray her as the intelligent one, the one who doesn't want to deal with stupid men. But when she gets out, her whole plot revolves around helping stupid men. Larry only breaks her out because he needs a tracker, which we might as well get into the racist stereotypes now because that's one of them. There's also this stereotype in movies of Native American women being objects of desire. They're beautiful, they're there for the white man to acquire. And is that not what Teddy tries to do? He spies on her from afar because she's just so immaculate, so unattainable. But he's a gentleman. Whereas this guy, whose name I'm not going to learn how to pronounce, is the evil white man, Teddy is the nice one. He's the hero who saves her. Sacagawea's relationship with Teddy is a weird one, to say the least. Teddy says some of the most romantic things ever that make even me blush.
You're worth saving, my dear.
I think what happened was they took the only two characters in the movie with half a brain cell and just shoved them together. However, Sacagawea died in her mid-20s, unless we just sort of lost track of her after she stopped being useful to the white people surrounding her, in which case she could have lived well into her 80s. Unclear. Also, we never really see Sacagawea love Teddy back until after he saves her, and even then it sort of feels like she's along for the ride, not actively in love with him. So yeah, this one's just a little too creepy, a little too white saviory for me. I don't know, it's a tricky one. So here's my solution. You still give Teddy Roosevelt a crush to keep his character arc intact, but it's an age-appropriate woman who reciprocates his feelings and there's no power dynamic. Then you just make Teddy and Sacagawea besties. They shove their half brain cells together to make one to keep the museum in check. It's just not romantic. Another stereotype that this movie uses is that Native Americans are emotionless. They're stoic. They don't speak a lot. And I think the movie sort of tries to turn the stereotype on its head by saying, oh, she talks, silly moviegoer. She's just behind a glass case, and that's why everyone thinks she's so stoic. Which, like, this would be an okay joke if post getting out of the glass, she spoke. She only has a few lines and they're like,
He went east, but he lost control and crashed.
Or,
You saved me.
the only semi-positive relationship she has is with Rebecca. And even then, Rebecca's obsessed with the idea of Sacagawea. Regardless, I like their little bonding moment at the end and I wish we got to see more of it. I wish we got to see the girlies chit-chat. Because at least Rebecca sees Sacagawea as a person. She recognizes her accomplishments and worth as a human being and doesn't really want anything from her. I will say though, Sacagawea is smart, she's witty, and she can hold her own. She's also fully aware that she's a museum exhibit, just like Teddy. That's about it. I really wish I didn't have to talk about Sacagawea in relation to the men that surround her or the racist stereotypes imbued into her character. I don't want to talk about the tragedy of Sacagawea because that's so overdone with characters of color. I really wish I had more to talk about, but the movie doesn't give me much to work with. And Mizuho Peck is a wonderful actor who does such a good job of making this character a whole person with inner thoughts and feelings without much dialogue to go off of. Plus, she's of Cherokee descent, so yay for not casting a white actor in a Native American role. We've done it, folks, the bare minimum. Unfortunately, though, we are not given much insight in the next two movies, so this might be the first and last time we talk about Sacagawea's character in depth. This is a great example of a character who had so much potential. You could have gone so many different directions with this, but instead chose a vague, stereotypical caricature without goals or motivations and pushed her off to the side. I guess that's what I wanted out of these movies, among other things. I wanted to get to know the character Sacagawea.
Hey, Blondie.
Name's Jedediah.
Okay, I'm so jazzed to talk about this next character because who doesn't love a gay cowboy? I'm talking about the one and only Jedediah Smith. Sorry, I just had to get into costume real quick. Anyway. Let me start off by expressing a pet peeve of mine that is so trivial, but so important to me. I despise when people call him Jebediah. Like, it literally does not matter, it gets the point across, and I feel so stupid for thinking this, but I get angry for no reason.
His name is Jedediah.
Once again, we struck gold with casting because Owen Wilson is playing a cowboy. Do I even have to explain it? Actually though, his part was originally supposed to be a cameo, but audiences responded so well that they gave him more movie. Thank God. Sadly though, Owen Wilson remains uncredited. Which, like, one of his most iconic roles and he's uncredited? Also, apparently a lot of his and Steve Coogan's scenes with Ben Stiller were improvised. What's interesting is that Ben Stiller would do a whole bunch of different versions of the scene, improvising whatever to a toothpick, and then Owen Wilson and Steve Coogan would be given all these different versions, and then they'd improvise off of that. Crazy. Anyway, Jedediah was probably based on Jedediah Strong Smith, whose Wikipedia article I gave up on reading almost immediately. His whole character is based around the concept of manifest destiny, which was a belief held by Americans that they were destined by God to spread across the continent, to spread democracy or capitalism or whatever bullshit. Obviously, it's dumb and terrible, and it resulted in a lot of horrors brought upon Native Americans, Hispanic people, and pretty much anyone who wasn't white European. I don't expect Night at the Museum to tackle the ethics of manifest destiny, the same way I don't expect them to talk about the man who bought Sacagawea, or some of the other terrible things these exhibits have done or witnessed. It's a kid's movie. But I do think they kind of did a good thing, maybe probably by accident, by making manifest destiny feel like a joke. Like, these miniatures are trying to expand and obviously they're not going to get anywhere. And when Jedediah tries to explain what they're doing, Larry's like, Okay? Anyway. Like, yeah, God told you this. It's your God-given right. Cute. Your dynamite does nothing and you're gonna hit a wall. We see Jedediah assert himself many times like this throughout the movie. And yeah, maybe it's a Napoleon complex, because when you're that small, all you can do is act tough, act brave, act powerful. You've got to fight a whole Roman army. You've got to fight giants. If you don't seem strong, people are going to walk all over you. Right? Exploring the theme of masculinity through Jedediah is so interesting to me. He's your stereotypical American cowboy. He's got all the traits I just listed, he's got guns, he's got a horse, he's conquering new land, or at least trying to, and he's a great leader. Although there is a mayor character, but after the mayor gives a speech, we just sort of ignore him for the rest of forever and acknowledge Jedediah as the leader. Jedediah is a man. The first time we see Jedediah, he's just ordered his men to tie up Larry and to send a train straight for his head, hoping to split it open. When Larry begs Jedediah to stop the train, Jedediah tells him to quit whining and to take it like a man. He even, instead of teaming up with the Romans, argues with Octavius over who gets to defeat the giant. His masculinity gets in the way of his safety, because to him it would be more honorable to die at the hands of a giant yourself than to take help from a foe. You know the saying, the enemy of my enemy is my friend? Yeah, that. The next time we see Jedediah, he pops his head out of Larry's pocket just before dawn with guns pointed at Larry's head. Larry plucks him out, but Jedediah immediately tries to wriggle out of his grip, saying that he doesn't like to be manhandled and that it makes him feel small and powerless. Larry trivializes Jedediah's concerns, but instead of shutting down, Jedediah threatens to shoot Larry in the eye. Rexy comes bounding round the corner, and when Larry freaks and ducks, Jedediah immediately makes fun of him.
Look, the giant's scared. There's a bigger giant running around.
Because how dare Larry be scared when he has all the power in this situation? Jedediah at 2 inches tall didn't even flinch, so it's laughable that a man over 5 whole feet would. The next night, just as Larry's about to lock up, he notices the Romans trying to smash through the wall. He also notices the Western diorama trying to smash through the same wall, just from the other side. When they explain that they're trying to expand, Larry plucks the 2 diorama leaders out of their exhibits and sticks them on the bench. Jedediah once again freaks out, insisting that he doesn't like to be manhandled. Larry tells them to talk out their feelings, but Jedediah literally explains what being a man is to Larry. He says,
Look, we're men, we fight, okay? That's what we do.
Kind of how we pass the time.
You're like a giant, a freak, if you will. We can't expect you to understand that.
Larry asks why they'd fight if they have the whole room to run around in, so the leaders agree to not fight in exchange to not be locked up. At one point, Jedediah calls Larry Gigantor, and Larry asks Jedediah to not call him that because it hurts his feelings. Jedediah looks hopelessly confused, so Larry has to break down the concept of feelings to Jedediah.
So I call you Jed, I don't call you Tiny, right?
What's that supposed to mean?
Hey, Teeny, how does that sound?
I don't like it. It hurts my feelings.
Okay, well, Gigantor makes me feel like some sort of freak, so...
Despite all of this, Larry returns later on to find Jedediah, Octavius, and both of their armies in an all-out brawl. Larry asks what happened, and they claim they simply cannot coexist. The next time we see Jedediah is near the end of the movie on the 3rd night, once again in a fight with the Romans. Larry gives his rallying speech to the exhibits, but when assigned to the task of taking out the van with the Romans, Jedediah says he won't work with Toga Boy. This is Jedediah putting his masculinity and his pride ahead of his and his people's well-being for the 2nd time now. That is, until Larry's speech wins him over. Larry points out how many similarities the 2 leaders have and how they both want what's right for their people. And working together is the right thing right now. We'll never know the exact moment Jedediah changed his mind, but I think it probably has a lot to do with the not coming to life part. I mean, who is Jedediah if not a cowboy quarreling with Romans over their territory? There would be no Octavius to fight with, no Jedediah for that matter. It all goes away. So, they agree to work together. Although I will say it does kind of feel like a, yeah, let's get along for now, but then we'll go back to being men later and do the same exact thing for another 50 years. But they work so well together. I mean, along with a couple of their men, they're able to take out a van like 20 times the size of them. And as their men start to fly away one by one, sent into the abyss that is the night sky by the air spewing out of the tire, Octavius yells for Jedediah to save himself. And Jedediah yells back, "I ain't quittin' you." So for those of you who don't know, this is what I can only assume to be a reference to Brokeback Mountain. You know, the movie about cowboys. Jake Gyllenhaal's gay cowboy character says to Heath Ledger's gay cowboy character, "I wish I knew how to quit you." Actually though, in the junior novelization, Jed and Octavius are like in the middle of a battle when they have this exchange, which is somehow even more romantic. So I think this is an excellent time to mention Jedediah's sexuality. We won't really get to see this develop until later on, so we'll revisit the topic with each movie. But this, right here, this movie, this trilogy, Night at the Museum, if it did one thing right, it is the enemies to lovers trope. Jedediah and Octavius are sworn enemies of 50 years. Like, their rivalry has lasted for 50 years. Like, at this point, it is just homosexual by default. But they go from this to sharing an unbreakable bond. Like, they're inseparable, driving around in their little car together. And also, Jedediah calls Octavius Aki at some point.
Come on, Aki!
What? When Larry's trying to come up with a plan to catch Cecil, Jedediah drives up in the little remote-controlled car next to Octavius, and from that point forward, they are attached at the hip. Later, they crash the car and make their way back, but it seems like Jedediah has completely dropped his guard around Octavius, and vice versa. Jedediah and Octavius have fought side by side, so Octavius has rightfully earned Jedediah's respect, and again, vice versa, but you know, as a man. Also, Jedediah no longer feels like he has to prove himself with this bravado. Maybe it's the way Larry treated them with respect, stuck his neck out to save them, and entrusted them to handle important parts of the plan. Maybe it's surviving multiple near-death encounters with a certain Roman that makes you realize you can trust him. But all of this really makes you think. Was there a reason Jedediah put on this level of bravado? Obviously it's in his nature, being a miniature of the real Jedediah Strong-Smith, but it seems like there's more going on here. I briefly mentioned that Jedediah has to act big in order to compensate for being so small, but I think this could possibly have something to do with the old guards. We know that they're not the best people, and they have this museum guard thing down to a science. I mean, the instructions are written all over and scribbled upon with a lot of details on how to execute the job well. So, it wouldn't be a stretch to say that they value efficiency and order over compassion to make their lives a lot easier. It just kind of makes you wonder how they treated the exhibits, especially those that are significantly smaller and powerless. And Jedediah has a mouth on him for sure, which I'm sure the guards didn't like. When Larry picks him up, he absolutely freaks, and the way he says he doesn't like to be manhandled implies that it's definitely happened before, probably multiple times. Jedediah has built up this defense mechanism out of necessity, out of experience. Or maybe I'm just reaching.
Listen, Octavius, you gotta stop that.
It's Octavius, Mary.
Unfortunately, I don't have much to say about Octavius just yet, but I did put on red for him, so... He's like a toned-down version of Jedediah. Definitely a lot more gay, but again, we won't see this develop until the later movies. This movie is focused on the enemies to close friends arc, and they just develop from there. What's up? Editing Kylie here. I just thought it was important to let you know that I've been staring at one clip of Octavius for just a little bit too long, and now I'm convinced that Steve Coogan has been intentionally playing Octavius as gay from the very beginning. Like, he has been playing the long game. Anyway. He's a lot less outspoken as Jedediah. Like, he still doesn't like to be picked up by Larry, and he still wants to defeat the giants, but his business is with the Wild West, not giants. He's a lot more calm and collected, he's easier to win over, and masculinity is still a huge part of his personality, but he doesn't use it as a shell to protect himself the same way Jedediah does. Maybe it's their difference in cultures, you know? I'm about to pull this completely out of my ass, but when we think cowboy, we think rugged, we think manly. There's something so masculine about the American Wild West. It's an every man for himself, dog-eat-dog world where a man has to look out for himself and only himself. When we think Roman general, we think a little gayer, living a little more lavishly. There's an air of regality and easygoingness. Whereas cowboys are just so serious, Romans are more like, we just slaughtered a whole army. Let's go drink wine and have sex. Again, pulling this out of my ass, completely going off of vibes. Also, Steve Coogan plays Octavius, which is cool. Because, you know, if I had a nickel for every time Steve Coogan played a miniature figurine soldier,
I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice, right?
I will say, Octavius is very dramatic. We see this quite a bit throughout the trilogy, but a lot of his lines are just delivered with this Shakespearean Like, he has so many little one-liners that are so intense for no reason at all. My favorite example of this is when, in response to Larry being like, nah, I'm not a giant, you guys are just really little, Octavius says,
We may be small, but our hearts are large, metaphorically speaking.
Dramatic king.
I am Akhmin Ra, 4th king of the 4th king, ruler of the land of my fathers.
On to the next character, Akhmin Ra, 4th king of the 4th king, ruler of the land of his fathers. Oh boy, this cutie. The absolute shock experienced round the globe when we learned that this is not in fact a disgusting, decrepit mummy, but a Rami Malek, who is actually Egyptian, by the way. Mwah. Despite only being in the movie briefly, Akhman-Ra is such an essential character. I mean, his tablet is literally the reason that these guys have been coming to life every night. He was given the tablet as a gift so that he could live on with his family after death. Does this make Akhman-Ra the first iPad kid? Yeah.
He's got my tablet.
There are some discrepancies between this film and the third one, but it seems as though Akhman-Ra, after his tomb was discovered, was sent to New York and his parents were sent to the British Museum. At some point he's sent, presumably along with his tablet, to Cambridge, probably on loan or something. I say all of this now to contextualize Akhman-Ra's situation. He's a teenager-ish, probably around 16 or 17. An original draft of the script says he's 16, the book says he's a teenager, and the film never really says anything. But he's been that way a long, long, long time.
How old are you?
17.
How long have you been 17?
A while.
He had already started to rule his kingdom before he died, which means his parents probably died when he was young too. The circumstances surrounding his death are unclear for now, we'll get to that in the next movie, but the actual tragedy of Akhman-Ra's life begins after death. Despite dying young, Akhman-Ra still had his tablet, which worked in his favor until his family was split up in the 20th century. Akhman-Ra was sent with his tablet to the Museum of Natural History, but there's literally no way for us to know what he knew in terms of the move. Did he know his family would be split up? Did he know he was even moving at all until the move actually happened? So Akhman-Ra arrives without his parents, not knowing English, not even knowing where he is. And instead of somebody letting him out like Akhman-Ra probably expected, the museum exhibits are scared of him. It's their first time coming to life, so that's gotta be insanely confusing, like museum puberty, tablet puberty. And it probably took them a while to figure out that the tablet was the thing that did this too. I mean, it's this weird glowing object in a dark tomb next to a mummy who's trapped. Probably for a good reason, right? I mean, what if they let him out and he's a tyrannical ruler? What if they let him out and he stops them from coming to life? Akhman-Ra gets a brief reprieve from New York when he gets sent to Cambridge. And we don't know if he was let out there, but I'm going to assume from the casual way he mentions Cambridge when Larry lets him out that he didn't have a terrible time.
I went to Cambridge University.
I mean, he learned English there and doesn't seem upset about it. And yeah, if he was stuck the whole time, that would be bad, but it would almost be worse if he had a good time, because he would have that ripped away from him as well when he gets sent back to New York. This time, he can plead to the New York exhibits in English, a language a lot of them understand, and yet they still refuse to listen. Yikes. Oh, or maybe the old guards ordered the exhibits to keep Akhman-Ra locked up. They might have been scared that Akhman-Ra would take the tablet away from them too, so to protect their interests, to ensure that they could continue to be revived every night, they could have scared the exhibits, making up lies about Akhman-Ra to ensure he stayed trapped. Or they simply could have threatened the exhibits, but I doubt it. Which, let's take a brief detour for a second here and ask ourselves, what did Akhman-Ra want the tablet for, besides coming to life? When Larry lets him out, he says,
"Bestow the tablet upon me so that I may assume command of my kingdom."
So like, was he going to rule the museum? He knows he's not in Egypt anymore, he made that very clear, but like when he gets his tablet, he has no intention of ruling anything. I mean, I get it, it's like his last connection to his home and his family, and it's the reason he can still be alive, so yeah. I'd want it close to my person too. Anyway, Akhman-Ra, this poor kid, is then trapped, forced to come to life every single god night, stuck in a sarcophagus, begging for a way out. At best, the other exhibits feel indifference towards him. At worst, they're terrified of him. Akhman-Ra is reduced to screaming every night to be let out, but it's been going on for so long that they're used to it. Like when Teddy is showing Larry the temple, Teddy's not even fazed, telling the pharaoh his screams are useless.
You're only one, Pharaoh. You've been in there 54 years. You're not getting out tonight.
I can imagine 50 years of this really takes a toll. I mean, if you do the math, that's like a whole year and a half of human life. You know, if Akhman-Ra is able to come to life every night for 3,500 years. To make it even worse, in a draft of the script and in the junior novelization, the night guard actually has to lock the sarcophagus himself. Like it is an active choice to trap him. This can almost give Akhman-Ra a sense of hope. Like maybe one night, just maybe, the guard will forget or they'll be late or something, maybe? In fact, Larry almost does forget one night, but he locks it just in the nick of time. So, it never happens. And that's kind of brutal. When Larry finally lets him out though, Akhman-Ra acts like none of it ever happened. I mean, maybe it's trauma, maybe it's being so incredibly happy that he's out, but he pledges his life to Larry and is kind to everyone else. These people who have selfishly and cruelly kept him trapped for so long, he doesn't hate them, he doesn't hurt them, he forgives them. And that makes Ahkmenrah the kindest, gentlest character in this whole movie. Understandably, Ahkmenrah then forms an attachment to Larry. He immediately trusts him and vows to pay Larry back in whatever way he can because this man was the one who took pity on him, who cared enough to let him out. Let's not tell him that Larry only let him out of necessity though, let's just keep that our little secret. I feel like this bond is a really underrated one because you see it every time they interact throughout the trilogy. Ahkmenrah really loves Larry. He sees the kindness in Larry before anyone else does. And I think there's something really sweet about that. Also, Ahkmenrah is queer. I don't have any definitive proof except for this video, so please enjoy.
There's no way Courtney knows how to sail a sailboat. She barely knows how to drive a car.
Yeah, she's delusional.
You do not treat a Kardashian like that. Her vengeance will be swift and terrible, and they will know the meaning of the word fear when she crushes them like the insects they are.
You better run from Attila the Hun.
Alright, onto Attila the Hun, played by the wonderful Patrick Gallagher. Despite the fact that his dialogue is made up only of nonsensical gibberish, Gallagher is able to bring so much life and depth to Attila. There's so much going on behind his eyes, there's just a sparkle and it's so captivating to watch. Also, quick side note, if you do not follow him on Instagram, please do. He has such a nice vibe to him that it always makes me smile. In complete contrast to Patrick Gallagher, Attila is a brutal, ruthless warrior in this movie, which I think has some truth to it, but from my understanding, Attila wasn't this loud, crazed barbarian like the movie seems to think. His brutality and ruthlessness manifested itself in ways that were more commanding, intelligent, and cunning. Also, in my very, very, very limited research, I didn't find anything about Attila caring so much about magic. And also, I highly, highly doubt this character would fall for Larry's 101 magic tricks to fool your friends. Despite the way this movie really seems to care enough not to whitewash its characters, it sure doesn't have a problem depicting racist imagery, as we saw with Sacagawea. As I've mentioned, Attila just sort of talks in this non-language gibberish the whole time, and I think it's supposed to be Mongolian, but like, what? He just screams random syllables. It's easy to tell that the people who worked on this movie really cared about it. So I just feel like a little more effort could have been put into Attila's character, meaning have him speak a real language. I will say though, because it's gibberish, it's kind of interesting to see the vocal habits of the actors. Like Rami Malek leans towards G's and B's,
Igugu, bagayaka miku,
while Patrick Gallagher leans more towards L's, M's, and S's. I don't know, it's dumb, but like, a little interesting. Attila also falls under this kind of masculinity complex thing that Jedediah has going on, but for different reasons. And I think it's completely fake, like I think he had a fine relationship with his dad in real life, but I just love that it's daddy issues. I don't know, like Larry's whole speech has me cackling, like...
Little baby, all alone in a tent, whose daddy went off to pillage some town, or go and plunder somewhere, just doing his job, but who was left alone?
And then Attila starts to cry, and then Larry sings to him, and then they hug it out. Probably the first hug Attila's like ever had in his life. After their feeling sessions though, they have to hit each other because God forbid men have feelings and talk about them and cry about them. No, men fight it out, they punch it out. Larry and Attila have this quick little slapping each other on the back as a good gesture while simultaneously trying to prove that they're the stronger person by hitting harder. I think Attila's respect for Larry comes from Larry manning up. This whole time Larry's been running from Attila, so Attila sees him as an easy target. This is their chance to dick around, because I'm positive the old guards never let Attila and his men roam. It's only when Larry stops running that Attila sees him as worthy. Attila screams at Larry, but Larry screams right back. That's a man. That's someone respectable. That's someone who has proven himself worthy as a night guard. Maybe it's his way of protecting the rest of the museum, because we never see him openly hostile to any of the exhibits, just Larry. Maybe he really cares about these guys and wants what's best for them. He wants a night guard who he knows will protect everyone. From this moment on, they're allies. In a way, they kind of learned from each other. Attila taught Larry to stand up for himself, and Larry taught Attila that it's okay to be vulnerable and to open up your heart.
Dewey? Is that your name, Dewey? No. What's Dewey? Dexter. Dexter, right? Hey, Dexter.
Dexter. You know what? F that monkey. The monkey actor who plays him, Crystal, she's adorable. Love her. But Dexter? No. F that guy. I've had a hard time trying to figure out why I have such hatred towards this character, but I think I've got at least part of it. Dexter's character is the embodiment of the childish humor in these movies. Now don't get me wrong, the fart, poop, butt aspect of slapstick? Golden. God tier. But the getting hurt part of slapstick is just not my cup of tea. I guess I don't find getting hurt that funny, and Dexter's character essentially boils down to animal hurt Larry, ha ha ha. And I get that part of it is supposed to be like a character growth thing. The problem with this though is that Dexter doesn't really grow that much. Like, he's annoying so that Larry can grow, which again makes sense, but the problem with this is that Larry tries being nice first. He politely asks for the keys.
Oh, thank you. Can I have those keys? Oh, good. What a good boy.
But Dexter bites his nose and pees on him. And I guess it's similar to the way Larry has to earn the respect of the other exhibits like Teddy and Attila, but I just find Dexter annoying. That's it. I just think it's a me thing. In an original draft of the script that I read, Dexter's not even a character. It's actually just a group of annoying monkeys with way less screen time and way less importance to the plot. There are some things that are interesting about this character, especially in relation to Larry, but all of it happens in the third movie, so stay tuned. One thing I do have to mention, Dexter is a real monkey. Like, he's taxidermied-ish. Like, he's not fake. Or at least I think that's the case. I mean, he can pee. To do that, he needs organs, because as we saw when Teddy got cut in half, there's nothing going on in there. It's just wax, baby. So yeah, there's that piece of information.
I'm Rebecca Hutman. I'm a docent here.
Oh, good old Rebecca. I like her character. My issue with the movie's issue with women isn't necessarily about Rebecca herself. It's more about the lack of women in total. Because all of the women in the movie are cool. None of them are bitches or sex objects, so that's awesome. There's just not a lot of them, and when they are there, they don't get a lot to say. When describing Rebecca, as well as the actress that plays her, director Sean Levy said she was the perfect mix of intelligence and beauty, which, like, very, very, very true. But, like, why is beauty always so important, you know? I don't know. We can't win everything. I think Rebecca has the most character out of the women for sure. She's independent and intelligent, and she has clear goals and aspirations and a life. I mean, she's writing a 900-page book, for God's sake. Speaking of, her enthusiasm for Sacagawea is almost contagious. Like, she has such a clear passion for writing and history that it makes you want to enjoy those things too. When she sees that everything actually does come to life, her smile is big and bright and it lights up the room, and you can't help but smile with her. I know she's supposed to be set up as Larry's love interest, but after watching the movie for the
362,507th
time, it's honestly not that clear. I think we're just so conditioned to see man plus woman plus building a relationship equals romance. Please forgive me for talking about Rebecca's character in terms of men, but I just think this is so interesting because duh, she's the love interest, right? First, she's clearly annoyed with him, thinking, along with everyone else, that he's just some lazy guy who might get the night guard position. She gets especially annoyed when he asks dumb questions on her tour, thinking he's trying to mess with her and make the kids laugh. After she confronts him, he offers to buy her coffee, purely as colleagues for an informational download. This could be interpreted as romantic interest, but I honestly think it's Larry just being awkward Larry. And while they're having coffee, they exchange life stories, but not once do they ask the regular questions of like, so, do you live with your boyfriend or girlfriend? When Rebecca tells Larry that she's giving up on her dissertation because she can't get into Sacagawea's head, Larry tells her that everything comes to life in the museum because he wants to be a good person and he wants to see her happy, but she thinks he's making fun of her. There's actually another instance of this in the book, so it doesn't feel like it's coming out of the blue. When she confronts Larry about asking stupid questions on the tour, she asks if he's making fun of her, clearly insecure. This gives her more incentive to be mad about the stuff that happens later. Even later, when she sees the exhibits out in the streets of New York, she rushes back to the museum, overjoyed. But her joy has nothing to do with Larry. It has to do with the fact that she loves history, and history is coming alive, especially Sacagawea. God, when Sacagawea shows up, f*** Larry. I don't even know a Larry.
You rock. I am a
big fan.
Rebecca and Larry could be love interests, I don't know. But if you replace her with a guy for a brief moment, I don't think it would be interpreted as romantic at all. I think they just became good, close friends over a short period of time, and there's something really sweet about that. God, I love Rebecca. Just wish we got to see more of her.
No, Mr. Frederick was my father. I'm Cecil. Good to meet you, Larry. Reginald. Gus!
Ah, where is he? I'll beat him with my fist.
Let's talk about Cecil, Reginald, and Gus. They all basically serve the same purpose, so I'll mostly be referring to them as a unit, but talk about star power! Dick Van Dyke, who apparently has never played a villain before, Bill Cobbs, and Mickey Rooney? I also learned in the director's commentary that they auditioned for this, like they weren't even asked. How neat. But yeah, Cecil is the main one, Reginald is the sensible one, I guess, and Gus is the angry one. Because as we all know, short plus angry equals excellent comedy. I will say though, I laugh at just about everything Gus says. Like I think he calls Larry meat sauce at one point in the book.
Instructions. You start with 1, 2, 3,
4.
Are you cracking wise? I ought to punch you in the nose, hopscotch.
The guards are an interesting bunch of villains because their motivation is solid enough for this movie being what it is, and they're not completely evil people. I feel like it's so easy to make villains in children's movies an evil entity, but it's just these guys, these 3 old men guarding a museum. And while I don't think they're completely good people, I also don't think they're completely bad people. Although the way they treat Larry's supposed death in the books is so funny, like Reginald says, "Attila must have ripped him to shreds. Let's take a moment." And they all take off their hats and literally take a moment. Anyway, they've had this job for forever, they've become super close friends, and most importantly, the tablet now affects them too. They feel young again every night. And the movie is a little unclear as to the exact effects the tablet has on them, but the book is loud and clear. Not only do they feel young every night, but the tablet is also literally keeping them alive, like they've been alive for over 100 years. So yeah, if the tablet is the reason they are still alive, I can see why they would need it. Unfortunately, this is not canon, because at the end of the movie, the guards are no longer employed at the museum, but they make a reappearance in Secret of the Tomb. If the tablet was the thing keeping them alive, they would be dead in Secret of the Tomb. Also, an original draft of the script has them actually de-aged to look young again, but I don't think I like this because it doesn't really fit the vibe, and also it just places way too much importance on external appearance. Even if the tablet doesn't keep them alive, I think they still have solid reasons to want it. And again, I don't think they're terrible people. As opposed to Larry, whose affection grows for the exhibits the more he spends time with them, the guards seem to become desensitized to it. We never get to see them at their job, so we can only speculate, but I don't think they ever felt true affection for the exhibits, or if they did, it faded over time. They outgrew the magic. Because it's heavily implied that they keep order and lock things up swiftly every night, the guards probably just got tired of dealing with these big personalities night after night. I don't think they'd take the tablet if they weren't getting fired. Like, they may not care deeply about the exhibits, but I don't think they'd purposely try to take their life away unless it was for something really important like their youth. In the same vein, I don't think they'd purposely try to frame a man like Larry and ruin his life unless it was for something really important, like their youth. I think they justify it by finding the laziest, stupidest person they can, 1, so it'll make the job easier, but 2, so they'll feel less guilty because Larry deserved it. Plus, Cecil even recommends that Larry brush up on his history to make his time at the museum easier. Once again, maybe I'm reaching. Maybe I just want to see the good in people. Maybe we need a prequel trilogy?
No.
Oh, and also, they're gay. They plan on going on a vacation together after they leave the museum.
If you're ever in Boca, look us up.
And they've been with each other every night for decades.
Dr. McPhee, the museum director.
Seems like a fun guy.
Control you, young, please. Can we?
To wrap up the character section, I want to speak just a little bit about Dr. McPhee. He is not important. Like, at all. His character is mostly omitted from the script, and he's terribly unfunny in the book. But in the movie? Every time he speaks, I lose my goddamn mind. It's the way he doesn't make prolonged eye contact. It's the way that he starts sentences that don't make sense but never finishes them, but expects you to get exactly what he means, but he's so serious the whole time. I'm aware that this is just Ricky Gervais being Ricky Gervais, but I don't think I've seen him in anything else, so I am going to continue to live in a world where it's just the character that acts like this, not him. If not for the very small fear in the back of my head of the Disney copyright goblin, I would just include all of his lines in one big compilation, so just gonna have to go see the movie for yourself. Although, if you've made it this far, I'm pretty sure you have seen the movie. Also, I hate to compliment Ricky Gervais, but most of his lines are improv, and again, he is the funniest part of this whole movie, so...
Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice.
Shame on me.
Huh?
Fool me. Shame on me.
You.
Fool me twice. There. Got it.
Take it or leave it.
Oh yeah, and in the book, they just like finish his thoughts and sentences and try to make them make sense. Like it takes the charm out of the character and he's just some stuffy guy. Okay. The biggest question surrounding this character is whether he knows the exhibits come to life. I'm gonna be straight up with you, the answer is no. The second movie kind of confirms this, and the third movie definitely confirms this. But I really enjoy how the first movie kept it vague. Because after Larry's first night, Dr. McPhee asks,
Would you kindly do me the favour of explaining this?
which like, yeah, is a valid question either way. But it could mean, why did you put him there? Or it could mean, why didn't you make sure the Romans stayed in Rome and the cowboys stayed in the Wild West? After the next night, McPhee asks, foam in the Neanderthal display. Again, this question could mean a few different things. Both of these examples on their own are kind of weak, but combined with this third thing, I think they make a pretty compelling case. When McPhee shows Larry the news, he is not surprised at all. Like, there's T-Rex tracks in the snow, cavemen on the roof, cave paintings in the subway, and McPhee is not shocked. He doesn't ask how, he's just like, really, dude? So yeah, the way the movie treats this question is super, super cool. Alas, movies 2 and 3 put a stop to it all. Alright, lots of characters, but they're what make this movie. It's about them, and each one of them is so interesting and fun and unique, and they're filled with so many details and so much love. But I have exhausted pretty much all I can say about them, so let's move on to the script, or at least a draft of the script dated February 4th, 2005. God, where do I start with this thing? Well, Larry Daly is actually Larry Johnson, and Nikki is actually Pete, and he likes baseball, not hockey. For real though, the script has some major changes as far as Larry's character goes. For one, he no longer has these schemes. Those belong to his butch lesbian super, Sasha. Larry's goal, his path to greatness, is to write a novel. In fact, he's been writing it for 15 years, but can never seem to finish. And despite Rebecca not being a big character in this version, I think she would make such a great parallel to Larry, because she's writing her 900-page essay on Sacagawea because she loves her and wants to talk about her and learn about her. Larry's writing his book because he thinks it will lead him to greatness somehow. Larry's somehow even more of an average Joe than he is in the finished movie. Things sort of happen to him. He doesn't really do anything himself until the end. And this Larry is so pitiful, like he hates himself. Whereas movie Larry is sometimes mean and selfish, this Larry's just cowardly at most. I want to read you the opening voiceover to the script, which we learn is actually about a character in his book, but is clearly actually about Larry himself, you know? I am utterly unremarkable. For me, life holds no surprises. I wake up the same time each day, I go to sleep at the same time each night. Though once awake, I can never remember my dreams. Perhaps I have none to remember. Perhaps my destiny is to observe from afar, to watch but not participate. Perhaps my unremarkable nature is an asset that gains me access to places no one else can go. Bro, what? When looking for a job at the employment office, he literally asks Debbie for a job where no one will see him, implying that he believes he's so pathetic for not finishing his novel that it would be embarrassing to be seen resigning to an ordinary job. When Teddy berates Larry for doing his job poorly, Larry meekly defends himself, saying he almost finished his novel, but Teddy says having almost finished is not the same as having done something. And Larry says he can't do anything. Teddy says Larry just doesn't believe in himself. Speaking of Teddy, all of the other characters are dicks to Larry, and in this version, he's not a dick back. We learn that Larry actually put Erica through law school, but when he was down on money, she left him. And Pete/Nicky, he is so embarrassed by his dad. Early on, he dead-ass lectures Larry, asking him if he's ever really accomplished anything, saying writer's right and that Larry's missed his moment. What Pete wants for his birthday is for Larry to get a job and to take care of himself, and he says this all to Larry's face. And then, when Larry finally gets a job, you know, at that old place called the Museum of Natural History, Pete is upset because it's an embarrassing job, I guess. He feels so bad about what he said that he says to Larry, "Did you get this crappy job because of what I said?" Larry then tries to explain the museum and how it comes to life, and Pete like, "Oh, don't worry, Dad. I won't tell anybody about how the Natural History Museum is magic and that everything dances around all night." Another day, Larry goes to grab Pete before work, and Pete like, "How could you do that? Show up here in uniform when I have friends over?" Larry asks Pete to come to work with him, but Pete does not want to at all, but Erica forces him to. Pete Nicky is a f***ing bro. And then there's Teddy. Movie Teddy is really strict on his morals and is tough on Larry, but he cares and wants Larry to succeed. It's tough love. It feels like script Teddy was trying to go for the tough love, but just kind of forgot to show the love part. Like it's there, but he's so much of a dick that you forget the nice parts. In that one moment where he says Larry can only ask one question and Larry asks if it's a 3 wishes kind of deal, he says, "No, it's because you're annoying and your breath smells like William H. Taft's feet." Also, this is a little off topic, but when Teddy's explaining the tablet to Larry, which is not actually a tablet in this version, but we'll get to that later, Larry says, "Hey Teddy, bull." So that gave me the idea of the Night at the Museum trilogy, but this time Larry can swear. Where's Sean Levy? In the script, the exhibits lock Larry in the gift shop while they have a dance party / fight each other. And then Teddy rides in and immediately calls Larry disgraceful. He's just a little too hard on him, I think. Just a smidge. The guards are also worse in the script too. Instead of advising Larry to brush up on his history, Cecil tells Larry to forget translating the tablet. It's pointless, it won't help. They also lock Larry in the museum every night and then just go to sleep. For literally what reason? And after the second night, they find Larry's hat hanging from T-Rex's teeth, which Rexy's name in the script is just T-Rex. So Gus's role, whose name is Meredith in the script, says, "It ain't him." And they all just take off their hats and bow their heads like, damn, that blows. Anyway.
Moving on.
Since we've mentioned Meredith, he is no longer the mean guard, but the stupid guard, which is actually kind of funny, I will not lie. Also, I don't know if they're making this up as part of the plan, but once Larry's on board, they say, "Welcome to the secret society of the night guards." Crazy! Also, Cecil has a gun at the end. That's it. Anyway, Larry. Larry's just a little cowardly, is all. He hides in the coat room on the first night because he hears weird noises, but like, I would do that too, so he doesn't actually see anything come to life. And when he does this, he feels so much self-loathing, saying, "So this is what your life has come to." And on the next night, all of the magic he's seeing, all of the exhibits, he attributes it to his depression. Buddy. So, Larry's not this selfish jerk we see in the movie, so all of these characters being awful to him makes us feel really bad for him. And I guess that's the vibe of this script. Larry's not learning to love and care about others, but learning to love and care about himself, because he's immediately ready to do whatever it takes to make Pete Nicky happy and to make the museum a fun, safe place. It's a whole different kind of growth, and I think they're both compelling stories. I just prefer the finished movie version a little better. It's a little more active, and I enjoy seeing the straight white man learn to love and care about others. Not that he shouldn't care about himself. Straight white men also have self-esteem issues, but we've been caring about the straight white man, and I think there's plenty of self-importance, as a generalization, coming from that group of people. There were quite a few other differences in the script. For one, the vibes were a lot creepier. There's a thunderstorm going on, the Temple of Akhmun-Ra is a lot more ominous, and T-Rex turns his head when Larry's not looking in the beginning. The Tablet of Akhmun-Ra, which came to the museum in 1927 here, is actually the puzzle of Akhmun-Ra, so it works a little differently. The whole last night and end sequence is a game of rearranging the puzzle pieces for it to say different commands. So it currently says,
"All things in this hall will escape death to bring glory and guard the king in his journey to the afterlife."
But when Larry drops it, for instance, it scrambles to, "For Akhmun-Ra, to bring glory and guard the king, all things in this hall will escape." But Larry quickly changes it back. Cecil uses this to his advantage when he steals the tablet, rearranging the pieces to make everyone freeze and stuff like that. Also, the tablet has to be in the hall with the exhibits at sunrise or everyone will turn to dust, so that's a bit, dangerous. Another difference is the way Larry attempts to bring order to the museum. First, there is no Attila. It's medicine men now. But don't worry, they still keep the racist non-language. It's just supposed to be Cherokee now. Larry brings them the music of his people, dancing in the dark, and they all just kind of vibe. He gets the tiny cowboys a model train set, he does the same key trick with the monkeys, he pretends to be a god to the tiny Mayans and brings them Skittles as a gift, but threatens them with Mountain Dew if they misbehave, and then he pours a can on them anyway. He introduces soccer to the Huns and Europeans so they get along. He puts on a movie for Sacagawea because he physically can't get her out, and he ties a bone to the ceiling fan for T-Rex. And then there's the Easter Island head. You can tell his cadence isn't quite figured out yet because sometimes he throws in more complex words and it feels just a little off. First he wants gum gum, but then he specifically wants juicy fruit, but then later he wants Shasta, which I guess is a soft drink. Larry's fix is to bring him a banana peel, because apparently that's what people used to offer Easter Island heads during ceremonies. Another fun sequence we don't get to see in the movie is the different exhibits having fun in Central Park after they escape. The animals are playing in the snow, the Mayans build a snow temple that's like 4 feet high, Christopher Columbus is flirting with the Alice in Wonderland statue, which is thoroughly not alive, the Mayans shoot arrows at Columbus, who throws a snowball back, and then the monkeys join in the snowball fight. Lewis and Clark board a bus asking to be taken to the Pacific Ocean, and the bus driver's just like, I can take you as far as 11th Avenue. Everything gets tied up pretty nicely as we approach the end. As they chase the guards in the stagecoach trying to get the tablet back, Larry has Pete Nicky throw a T-Rex bone, because remember, Pete Nicky's thing is baseball? It's this clever little, hey, remember this detail about this kid that you probably missed? Yeah, it actually helps save the day a little bit. It's like in Jurassic Park 2 when Jeff Goldblum's daughter saves the day with her gymnastics by kicking a raptor in the head. I don't remember, it's all dumb. This whole concept is dumb and cheesy and I don't like it. At the end, the guards are hired back, but they're making their starting wage from 1915, which is 5 cents an hour. This means they started working here before the tablet arrived. This is not an important detail, but I do think it's interesting. Also, we love taking away the right to a living wage as punishment for committing a crime. Anyway, Larry finishes his manuscript and you'll never guess what it's called. Night at the Museum. While they're eating Chinese food, Larry gives Pete Nicky his manuscript as a gift to do with as he pleases? I don't know. Pete Nicky opens his fortune and asks Larry what his says. Larry has one memorized from way back in the beginning of the script though, and that says, he begins to die that quits his desires. Which, true. And I know I'm not the smartest person in the room, but I don't quite get the point. Larry never showed interest in quitting his novel, and it never seemed like he was gonna quit his museum job either. It really felt like the theme of this version was believing in yourself and following through with your dreams, but at no point was I ever like, uh-oh, Larry's given up. So yeah, the script has some cute gems and fun points that really make you think, but overall, the finished movie is better. It has a clearer trajectory, better themes, and the characters are more interesting and complex. Oh, and also, there's another jump scare with some brooms falling out of a closet. So, let's take a look now at the book. And when I say book, I don't mean the book that the movie was based off of by Milan Trank. I mean, it's a junior novelization for the movie. Like, it's for children. Like, more for children than the movie is for children. And from what I can tell, it was released before the movie in November of 2006, and it was written by Leslie Goldman. You can tell it pulled mostly from the finished movie, but there were also some parts that pulled from that draft of the script, and some parts that are completely unique to the book. I'm guessing it was written based off of a very late version of the script, or even the finished one, but there's so much improv in this movie that it probably changed the trajectory of the story, so the book could not have captured the finished product. I'm just gonna be straight up though. I did not like it. Not only was it super childish, but the way they drew out explanations was brutal. Like on the tour before the first night, Cecil calls Dexter a little ball of fun, but instead of leaving it at a confused reaction from Larry, they continue to elaborate. Larry was confused. How could a stuffed monkey be a ball of fun? The question is implied, you don't have to ask it. Or when Larry sees T-Rex drink from the fountain, the book says, the T-Rex skeleton was bent over the fountain, getting a drink of water. Because it was a skeleton, the water went into its mouth and through its body, spilling onto the floor. Yeah, we know. Or near the end, when Gus is stealing stuff, he asks the Civil War puppets if they have something to say. He only asked because the soldiers had no faces, and with no faces, they had no mouths, and with no mouths, they couldn't speak. We get it! It gets to the point where, because everything is explained so thoroughly, we know immediately upon meeting the guards that they're bad people. We get no shock value whatsoever. And looking back, these examples honestly aren't that bad. They just kind of rub me the wrong way. But I think children are smarter than we give them credit for. They put things together quicker than you think, and they don't need everything spelled out for them to enjoy something. The dialogue is also super cheesy. Like at one point, Teddy says, "But to guard a museum, that takes heart. That takes something the Spanish call
corazón."
What? And like I mentioned, Dr. McPhee finishes his sentences, which takes all of the humor out of his character. I think it would be hard to translate his cadence into written words and have it still make sense, especially for children, but God, I'd rather he not be there at all than have whatever the he is in the book. The Easter Island Head's cadence was screwed up too, even more so than in the script. The book only half commits to the dum-dum bit, so he spoke normally almost the other times, and it created this weird contrast that did not work well at all. Like when Larry asks if the head is talking to him, it responds with, "No, the other dum-dum. You knew, eh? You knew, dum-dum?" Whereas the script pitied Larry, the book did not like Larry, and Larry does not like himself. His character is a lot stupider, a lot more selfish, and he lies a lot more. He's messier, and it focuses a lot on how he's struggling to pay rent and bills. He's a college dropout, he has a criminal record, and he would frequently skip school to go to the museum. Though I do think this is an interesting parallel with Don, who mentions in the book that he would go to the museum on days off from school. And the book has very little sympathy for him. Larry asks for an off switch to the tablet, implying that he's so heartless that he would rather have these exhibits not come to life than to just find a different job. Once he reaches his wit's end on night 2, he's fine with leaving gum all over the Easter Island Head. He's fine with the cowboys and Romans killing each other, and he hopes Dexter escapes, meaning he hopes Dexter dies? The book wasn't all bad. There were some interesting bits that, dare I say, made improvements. Though I don't like how terrible they made Larry's character, it does create a bigger contrast with the person he becomes in the end. When the caveman turns to dust, you can feel how awful Larry feels. And when he goes to grab the keys from Teddy's hand, he doesn't say, "All right," like he does in the movie. He says, "I know, Teddy. I'm sorry." And just that "I'm sorry" makes it so much more, you know? Additionally, when Rebecca says she's giving up on her dissertation, Larry immediately blames himself. He thinks, "I ruin everything I touch." Just like he ruins all of his relationships, just like he ruins all of his business opportunities. And it makes you feel really bad for him for like the first time. The book also has this bug that appears once or twice. It doesn't hold much importance, but I love the little, motif it creates. Near the beginning, we see this bright blue bug scuttle by. Why? Who knows? Until later, when we see the bug stuck outside come sunrise and it turns to dust. It's this fun little foreshadowing moment about the museum that I just love. Important? No. Cool? Yeah. But yeah, other small things. The Hun language somehow feels even more racist when you look at it written down. The tablet is a puzzle in this version too, the guards are still massive dicks, and there's another jump scare. It's when Larry goes in for his first night of work and all of the lights turn off and then Cecil's just standing behind him with a flashlight beneath his chin. And if we're adding tallies, we might as well add the one near the end where Larry tries to jump from his own horse, which is named Lucky in this version and not Texas, onto Cecil's horse, and it's super heroic, but then he, face plants in the snow. The end sequence is a little different, and I know it was actually filmed this way at some point, but basically, Achman-Ra cannot read, so they travel to Rebecca's apartment to get her help translating the tablet, or puzzle, sorry. They have Attila throw a rock through her window to get her attention, and she comes down to help. Yay for giving women more screen time! We also get to see this little bit near the end where Rebecca teaches Achman-Ra how to read, and it just makes me smile. And speaking of the end, you know that party that happens, the dance sequence at the end? Apparently that happens 1 year later, or at least in the book it does. Oh, maybe that's why they have another career day at the end of the movie. Because the book is probably based on a rough version of the movie. They probably cut the 1 year later part out of the movie, but then just left the rest. I don't like that though, so I will not accept it as canon. Because to me, it feels like a celebration of the previous night. Out with the old tyrannical guards and in with the new cool guard. One that cares about them and creates a space for them to have fun and be safe in. So yeah, book pretty bad. I will say, just like the script, it gave us a few gems, but overall, I did not like it. The way it's written is cheesy and boring, and it lacks a lot of the charm that the movie has. And I would say it's hard to translate something like this into a written format, but I had the time of my life reading the script, so I'm sorry, Leslie Goldman. I didn't mean to rip you a new one. Like, I'm sure you're a wonderful person and author, but it's just not my cup of tea. I debated if I wanted to include this part in here because it's not technically canon in the movieverse, but I think it's only right that we talk about the book that the movie is based off of. The Night at the Museum by Milan Trank, written in 1993. I must say, this is such a cute book. It opens on a super happy note. Hector loves his life, and he's so excited to put on his uniform and start his first night at his new job at the Museum of Natural History. The chief guard assigns him an easy task for his first night: watch the dinosaurs. And he does that, but he ends up falling asleep, and when he wakes up, the dinosaurs are gone. He freaks out and lets the other guards know they've been robbed, but the other guards are just like, oh no, the dinosaurs probably just wandered off somewhere. And Hector's like, what? He approaches a couple of guards who are unloading food off of a train to feed the exhibits. He helps them with this task, and then they point him in a new direction that they think the dinosaurs went. This happens for some time. He helps a couple of guards out, they point him in a new direction, etc. But the dinosaurs have been in the dinosaur room this whole time. They were just playing hide and seek. And apparently all of the guards knew this too. They were just playing a prank on Hector to get him to do their jobs for them. You know, because apparently they do this to every new guy. In the morning, the chief says Hector must have had an easy time all night sleeping in front of the dinosaurs, unlike his co-workers who have real jobs, hard jobs. One of the guards then calls in sick, and the chief asks Hector to cover the day shift too. Hector agrees. The book wraps up by saying something along the lines of, if you see a sleeping guard, they had a really long night taking care of exhibits, so don't wake them up. I don't know. The night at the museum is just cute. It doesn't necessarily have a moral or anything. It's just a sort of folktale-esque story that sets out to explain why guards fall asleep during their shifts. Unless it's about capitalism and labor in the United States and how it's a dog-eat-dog world where sometimes you just have to make someone do your job for you but then pretend like you did it so that you get some praise and eventually you do this enough to maybe get promoted. Meanwhile, poor schmuck Hector is trying to be nice, but you can't really be nice and take on extra work in a job like this because people will just take advantage of you and you aren't getting paid enough, my friend. And don't get me started on the f***ing chief. Oh, you had the easy job last night. F*** off. Or maybe this is a children's book about dinosaurs playing hide and seek. And in case you couldn't tell, the protagonist's name in this book is Hector, but after the movie came out, they actually republished it with the name Larry. Again, Night at the Museum making a significant change in the world around it. Okay, this might be quite a stretch here, but good thing I'm flexible. And nobody can argue with me on this because I am the lore god for these movies, but that won't really make sense until later in the video, so just hang tight. In my Night at the Museum, in my canon, when Larry is speaking at Nikki's career day, he's telling the story that's in this book. He explains how they have to walk the animals because they're stiff from standing still all day. He explains how they have to unload food from the trains. He explains how dinosaurs like to play hide and seek. Because, like, what else can he say? The story is the perfect mix of believable to children, but not sounding too crazy to adults. And it's cute because it acknowledges the book in the movie, and it's all wrapped up in this nice little cute bow. So yeah, I like the book. Good kids book. It doesn't talk down to the audience in junior novelization. And it's a unique concept that explains something that didn't need to be explained, but I'm glad it was explained. Guards don't nap because they're lazy, they nap because they have actually really busy nights. How creative! How cute! The more I talk about this book, the more I really like it. DVD extras time. First we're going to talk about the deleted scenes, and then we're going to move on to the directors and screenwriters' commentaries. The first few deleted scenes are all pretty similar. They reestablish what we already knew about Larry. He's excellent at bullshitting, and he's not very on top of his life. To include these would be to shove it down the audience's throat, and I think the finished movie actually does a really good job of balancing showing this side of Larry without over-explaining it. The first one is Larry calling his cable company to get them to turn on cable for the night because Nikki's coming and they really wanted to watch the game together. Obviously he didn't pay his bill on time, but he bullshits his way through and he gets them to turn it on. The second one is his landlord confronting him about not paying his rent on time. He bullshits his way through that one too. The third one is also a scene in the book where Larry's pitching his restaurant idea to a group of investors who are also dentists. It reestablishes that he's a big picture guy, not a small details kind of guy, because when they ask questions, he's like, oh, yeah, no, we totally got it figured out, no big deal. And then he calls himself a vibe guy, which I think is so silly.
You're the vibe guy. I'm a vibe guy, exactly. I'm a vibe guy.
One of the dentists is played by Ed Helms, which I think is also silly because he has a scene in the second movie where he plays a completely different character. Or it's the same character and he changed career paths completely. Let me know if I should do an exploration on Ed Helms in the Night at the Museum cinematic universe. Anyway, this scene is incredibly long and painful, and I'm glad it was cut, but it did have a few golden lines in there, like the vibe one, or
I just don't know if we're about scalded babies.
and
Sorry, Larry. Keep flossing.
the fourth scene is just an extended version of the part where Larry takes Nick to the museum and nothing comes to life. It was very clearly cut because it's super repetitive and ran way too long. Like after all of the say hello to Rexies, there was also
And a good evening to you, my friend Rexy! The past comes alive now!
and
Be prepared to have your mind blown!
can I count this as a long bit? I think I will. The fifth one has more lines for Sacagawea and Akhman-Ra, but the lines are whatever. Larry introduces Sacagawea to Akhman-Ra and Nikki, and Sacagawea corrects him on the pronunciation of her name, saying it's Sacagawea. Which I looked it up, both versions are preferred by different groups, I just generally found Sacagawea to be the more common one. Then Akhman-Ra corrects him on the pronunciation of his name, saying it's Akhman-Ra. Larry just says, Sack, sack, Nick, sack. Like, whatever. Sure. I guess. But then the movies never acknowledge this again, so it doesn't matter at all. Larry tries to explain the situation with the tablet to Sacagawea and asks if she thinks she can track the guys who took it. And she says, I can do that. Let us go. But then they have this really cool strut through the museum to this funky music that I absolutely adore, so. The sixth scene is just a shot of Lewis and Clark trying to board a bus to the Northwest Passage. It's essentially the same as it was in the script. The bus driver says he can take them as far as 125th and asks if they have a Metro card. They look at each other and one of them says,
We have 2 rabbit pelts and a stick of dried venison.
and the bus driver's like, fine. And I get it, this scene wasn't necessary at all and it probably took away from the action, but it's silly all the same. The seventh one is a long extended version of the scene where Larry confronts Attila about his family trauma. It's just as racist, it's way too drawn out and repetitive, but there's some good stuff in there about feelings and emotions. Larry says,
This is safe here. Feelings don't have arrows or spears or shields or anything. They're just feelings.
After the hug, he says,
Look at this guy. I think I just met your most dangerous weapon, your smile. Feel good to feel. It's okay to feel, right?
He tells Attila he can still maraud, just no limb ripping. We'll get you a stress ball. It's about boundaries. Kinda cute. The final deleted scene is an alternate ending that's also in the book. I believe it was filmed pretty early on, which is probably why it was published in the book, but they need Rebecca's help translating the tablet, but she's asleep and her buzzer's broken. Attila offers to burn her out, but Larry declines, instead suggesting he shoot an arrow through her window. Rebecca comes down and helps Akhman-Ra read, and it's cute, but then Larry says to Nikki about Akhman-Ra, I don't think he's wearing any underwear. And Nikki laughs. Anyway! Oh, and the tablet's massive. And after they finish the incantation, we get this extremely wide, awkward shot of Attila facing the camera, then turning the head back towards the museum. Which I get is them showing that the incantation worked, but it's so awkward, like... I love it! And also, look at this picture of Akhman-Ra. Ah! Yeah, I like the current ending better. I think it's literally just personal preference. Like, there is no real reason at all. This one's good too. I like it. Okay, not only are we treated to a director's commentary, but also a screenwriter's commentary. We'll start with director Sean Levy. And this section should probably be labeled fun facts because that's pretty much all he gave us, which I'm not complaining about. And also my DVD is missing a solid 20-minute chunk in the middle where it glitches out, so I did miss some stuff. Apologies. Anyway, Sean Levy, my guy. He is just so lovely to listen to. His section was definitely repetitive, but most of that repetition was praise for the cast, especially Ben Stiller. The way he talks about everyone, you can tell it was genuinely a good group of actors and crew, and his love for the movie shines through it all. In fact, he says Night at the Museum is the movie he's most proud of. Now, whether that's changed between 2006 and now, that's none of my business. One of the major things I took away from this commentary was that this movie was a product of collaboration and improvisation. Like the amount of times Levy said, oh, so this was improv. Like it got to the point where he had to say, so this was actually not improv. He mentions a lot of things were Ben Stiller's idea, like adding more color to the background to make the setting livelier. Ben Stiller also does this thing where they'd shoot the lines of a scene on his face and then go back and shoot the exact same scene with the other actor, but during this round, Ben Stiller would be a little looser and improv a little more, so then they'd have to go back and reshoot Ben Stiller because either the reactions of the actor didn't match up or these lines were just better. It's interesting because Levy pointed out how he and Ben Stiller often do different kinds of movies. So, Levy promised Ben Stiller that Night at the Museum would be edgier than your average family comedy.
Oh, that.
And Stiller promised more sincere emotionality than your average Ben Stiller movie.
But why male models?
Levy also promised that there would be no dance party ending, but that obviously fell through. For the better, I think. Sean Levy also mentioned that he played a lot of the parts for the movie himself. Apparently Ben Stiller reacts better when there's something real in front of him. I mean, I would say that's true for all of us, but whatever. So he would play Rexy in all of the non-real VFX parts. He also voiced the screams for Achman Ra. Levy really stressed the importance of story throughout this commentary. He explained a rule that says if there are a lot of VFX, you need to stick to a plan. In comedies, the plan is usually more flexible. Night at the Museum, though, had both. It had more spectacle than most comedies, but was more comedic than most high VFX movies. But in the end, Levy always wanted the effects to serve the comedy, and more importantly, the characters. Like if a shot was just there to be cool, it was cut. Night at the Museum is a very surreal movie. It's a hefty mix of fantasy and reality, and because it's so big and bizarre, the characters need to be grounded to make you care about what's happening. Like the Teddy/Sacagawea plotline was originally cut, but it's such a large part of their characters that gives them depth and complexity, which in turn makes you care about them. Thus, it was added back in. Levy also mentions that there's literally no reason for Sacagawea to be behind glass. It was just needed for the plot, so that's how it was. No in-universe explanation at all. Levy loves to point out continuity errors and things of that sort, like Attila's hair not matching from one scene to the next, or Sacagawea's room in the Hall of African Mammals room, they're actually the same room if you look close enough. Or how when Jedediah's driving the car, it like skids up the hill, but in the next shot it's flipping over the hill straight. I think that's so silly, and I'm glad that the director thinks so too. A couple of other things that were brought up. One was how much audiences loved and responded to Jedediah and Octavius. I wonder why. Another was the costume designer, Renee April. Not much was said, but I absolutely have to agree that this was a massive undertaking and she knocked it out of the park. Levy said it's pretty historically accurate, which I do not know enough about to contradict, and the costumes just add to the absolute whimsy of the movie. All in all, they're just gorgeous. Rapid fire fun facts. The movie ended up under budget, a lot of trees were cut down in Central Park to make room for the horse chase scene, and the blue whale scene with Cecil was completely useless and only kept in the movie because it's the museum's signature exhibit, and when Levy talked to his friends, they'd all be like, well, you're going to include the blue whale, right? Completely irrelevant, but Levy talked a lot about his assistant Judd and how he was a calming presence and a big help. Not that he would give them back rubs or anything inappropriate, but like probably would if they asked, like that's how nice he is. But then he had to go and specify saying, but like purely in a heterosexual way. Mr. Levy, nobody was... You know what? Never mind. Side note, I have a conspiracy theory that Sean Levy doesn't believe in gay people. He's not homophobic or anything, like he just thinks they're an urban legend, like nobody's actually gay. And if they were real, he'd totally be an ally, but too bad because they're not real. But as I mentioned in my intro, despite all of this, Sean Levy somehow ended up inventing gay people. Obviously via Jedediah and Octavius, but also via everybody who watched the movie. Congrats, you're gay now. I have no backing for this theory, so,
Moving on.
Overall, the director's commentary made me fall in love with the movie all over again. The amount of love Levy and the others put into this movie really shines through. Like, he's so confident in the movie. He's willing to admit little silly mess-ups, and is willing to admit when something's cheesy or stupid, but it's all out of love. Conversely, the screenwriter's commentary made me fall less in love with the movie. As a warning, I did partake in a plant and drink or two before I watched this, so take everything I say with a grain of salt. The screenwriters' names are Thomas Lennon and Robert Ben Garant, though I couldn't tell you who was who at any point throughout the commentary, so I'll be referring to them as a unit. Everything they did was a bit, and they barely talked about the movie at all. Like, they were like, we could share some interesting anecdotes about writing the script, but we don't have any. It was just a lot of emails. Topics of discussion then ranged from a lengthy discussion about Ben Stiller's jacket and whether it would be weird to say that they liked it on him, Michael Rockefeller getting eaten by cannibals, the fashion wing at the Met, because apparently a lot of the set pieces in the movie came from the Met, and a VR ride about Joseph Campbell interviewing George Lucas. They did make a couple of good points, one in which they hinted to the fact that museums do steal things. Like, it was all presented as a joke, like, oh yeah, the Egyptians were just throwing away their and the British saved it, and they definitely sent money back to Egypt, wink, wink. Just like how Teddy Roosevelt saved those animals from their own lives. They made a couple of jokes like this, but it was kind of hard to read the tone, so I wasn't exactly sure if they were joking at first. Another excellent point they made was how 99.9% of movies do not get made, so write whatever the heck you want. Multiple times they would write something and think, they're not actually gonna do this, are they? Sometimes because it was stupid, sometimes because it was expensive. Like when they wrote the monkey pees on him, they put a question mark by it because they're not actually gonna do this, right? I wish they didn't. Same thing with Larry saying, oh, thit, when his lip swells up. Another good but completely irrelevant point that they made was that it's called Night at the Museum, singular, but it's actually 3 nights at the museum. So technically by watching this movie, you're getting a deal, paying for 1 night, but getting 3. The last point I want to bring up is honestly one that I think everyone should listen to. It's just too bad it's buried in the screenwriter's commentary of Night at the Museum. They point out how this movie flies by, and if you reach the hour-and-a-half point in your movie and it's not nearing the end, explain everything with magic and wrap it up. Which, like, yeah, broad generalization that obviously doesn't apply to every movie, but like, movies are getting really long, and I have a really short attention span, and Night at the Museum is good because it's quick and easy, and it gets to the point without going in excruciating detail. And it is explained by magic. That's something they said too, that if they couldn't explain something in the plot, they'd just say it was magic. Originally, the tablet was a staff, but then the staff was a puzzle, but then the puzzle was too complicated, so they changed it to a tablet and everything was boiled down to magic. Ha! Yeah, silly, but also can I please refer you to the tablet lore section of this video. I think the biggest thing that really got me about this commentary was how the screenwriters doubted anyone would watch it. They were like, you were at the bottom of the barrel for special features. Like, you probably hit a wrong button on your remote and can't figure out how to fix it. Like, I can't imagine why else you'd be watching this. And they keep revisiting the topic, saying stuff like, you've had to have figured out how to turn off the commentary by now. Or at one point, one of them insults Lenny Kravitz, I don't really remember, it was hard to stay tuned into this, but later on he apologizes saying it was out of line, and the other one is like, well, he's literally never gonna watch this, so it does not matter at all. And at the very end, as the credits start to roll, they say something along the lines of, if you own this DVD and listened to the screenwriter's commentary, not only do you enjoy this movie, but you should go outside. Go outside and do something. I assume you're stuck in a base in Antarctica and have nothing better to do. And my jaw dropped as I looked down at the 91 pages I had written on this movie, and I felt like my life was just destroyed, decimated, like the GTA Wasted appeared across the screen of the movie that is my life. But then they tried to predict what the next movie would be about, suggesting a day at the museum, a fortnight at the museum, a weekend at the museum. Though they were kind of right when they did say, night at the museum, but this time we're going on loan. Yeah, so after witnessing the amount of care everyone seemed to put into this movie, watching the commentary and listening to the screenwriters not care was kind of jarring. And I don't blame them at all. I can't expect them to put the highest quality commentary into the world when we all know nobody's gonna watch, and half the dialogue was improv anyway. Who knows how much of their writing actually stuck. And also, they were very funny. I had an excellent laugh watching. So shout out to Thomas Lennon and Robert Ben-Garant for creating a movie that I love so much that I am willing to do this. Take a long, deep breath, because we are about to get into the mechanics of the Tablet of Akhmun-Ra. Unfortunately, I cannot avoid talking about other movies in this section, so spoilers ahead. And boy, do I have questions, so here goes nothing. The tablet brings stuff to life. How? We know it comes from Egypt and is therefore imbued with Egyptian magic, specifically from the moon god Khonshu. Its purpose is to let Akhmun-Ra and his family live on together past death. We could then assume that it brings back the soul of a person, and that soul then inhabits a wax figure, an exhibit, a body, or whatever. then it would literally be that person just in a different body. But with Akhman Ra, it's literally his body because he's not a wax figure. From there, the soul, with all of its memories, would go on to make new memories in the museum and be shaped by the people and environment around them, just as if they were alive. But the soul is a tricky thing to define. And okay, really quick science lesson. According to justenergy.com, potential energy is the stored energy of an object or system. Kinetic energy is the energy of an object or a system's particles in motion. So a ball on a cliff has all of this stored potential energy. You knock it off the cliff, it now has kinetic energy as it's moving and falling. So there's this soul theory. Alternatively, the exhibits are just that, exhibits. Like they're full of this potential energy that at any moment could turn into kinetic energy, and the tablet is the thing to make that happen. This theory is much more plausible. Regardless of how you define a person as a person, and I'm not going to answer that one because I think personhood is unique to each individual, these exhibits do not have souls. They are not the actual people they represent, mostly because I don't think they have the actual memories of that person. It's almost like they're a super expert on that person as far as memories go, like they're imbued with the knowledge of all of the things that happened to them. So Wax Teddy knows that real Teddy built the Panama Canal, and Wax Teddy knows that he himself did not do that, even if he has to bury it deep down. And it may take a lot of time for some of the exhibits to learn the difference or even come to terms with it. Because of all of this, the exhibits know about their whole life, even past the age they're depicted. So Teddy knows how he died. Additionally, and most importantly, all of the exhibits have the main drives and personality traits of their person. This also applies to fake characters. In the second movie, we see examples of this in Darth Vader and Oscar the Grouch. They're fictional characters, so they cannot have souls for the tablet to pull from. And yes, I realize that these movies make up exhibits and pretend that they're real. I'm going to ignore that because they are real in the Night at the Museum universe. And by all accounts, the Night at the Museum universe is basically the same as ours, plus or minus a historical figure or two. So to simplify things, I'm just going to refer to it as our universe. And I say our universe because Night at the Museum is actually a multiverse, but we'll get to that. Either way, fictional characters do not exist outside of their given media, like Star Wars or Sesame Street. They are not beings who are ever technically alive. So, no soul. According to the super expert theory, Darth Vader would then know all of the canon for movie Darth Vader and have movie Darth Vader's main drives and personality traits, like building the Empire or being prone to rage. The exceptions to this rule are animals or real bodies. For real bodies, the tablet literally just brings them back to life and restores them to good physical health, i.e. not a decaying mummy. They are themselves. It also restores their organs if need be in case they were mummified or taxidermied. This is why Dexter can pee, because I know we are all so concerned about that. For real bodies that are still alive, like the guards, it just keeps them that way so their body can still function healthily at peak performance. For the fake, plastic, whatever, non-taxidermied animals, the tablet isn't going to pull from a specific animal, so we eliminate the memories aspect and they're just brought to life with the main drives and instincts that you would see in an average animal of that species. Knowledge of life and existence for these animals starts the first night they come to life in the museum. Because of all of this, the nature of an exhibit can be skewed by our memories of that person. It's like the tablet took all of the data it could find on that person and generalized it into one being. We all remember Teddy Roosevelt as a brave, charismatic man. Maybe he wasn't like that at all. I don't know. I mean, these exhibits almost resemble saints in a way. They're just like a symbol of something, a model of something. They represent something, and they're remembered as those symbols. They're remembered as the things they represent, not as a person. In Egyptian mythology, the spirit was divided into 5 or maybe 9 parts, depending on the source that I looked at. I think they can all be essential to this movie, but I briefly want to talk about 2 of them. The first, the Ba, is what makes a person unique, and it's the part that lives on after death. It can also take many different forms. The second, and please forgive me if I'm pronouncing this wrong, is the Shut, which exists in a person's shadow, and that shadow contains a part of that person. It's a representation of that person, and in a way, statues were sometimes called Shuts, similar to how the exhibits function. A shadow, or image, is just as important as the person itself. The awareness of an exhibit as to whether or not they know they're an exhibit / in a museum is dependent on the intelligence of said exhibit / the person they were based off of. So someone really intelligent, like the Einstein bobbleheads, might realize it before the first night is over. I think a good chunk of them would realize something is up right away, being alive for the first time in a new setting surrounded by very weird people from all different walks of life. They all wake up with a strong objective that would reflect the wants of the person they're based off of. So Octavius wakes up ready to conquer new land and expand the Roman Empire, only to realize, wait, where the f*** am I and who the f*** are these people and why are they all giant? In addition to their objective, the exhibits all have some instinctual knowledge that gets them back to their places for sunrise. Because even when they're having a riot in the first movie when Larry's there, they stop all of their fun to return to their positions for the morning. This is the tablet creating that strong urge to return to their places, all in the name of self-preservation. The tablet wants to keep them alive, and the best way to do that is to get them to return to ground zero. Without a specific tablet command, I don't think the tablet is powerful enough that the exhibits couldn't override this, like the caveman who really wants the fire outside, so he gets caught outside at sunrise. Whether they put it together themselves or have outside help, all of the exhibits realize that they are indeed exhibits on their own time and in their own ways. Most of them probably by the second night they wake up. I think once the exhibits are brought to life for the first time, they are then able to absorb at least a little bit of what's going on during the day. They aren't fully conscious or anything, but they do collect the vibes.
I'm a vibe guy.
And general happenings around them. This way, they can learn whatever language they need to quickly if they didn't know it already, like Akhman Ra.
How can you speak English?
I went to Cambridge University.
The exhibits who don't speak English in the museum, they either didn't want to learn it, or they did learn it and they just don't want to speak it, which, like, mad respect, dude. It also gives them a way to acclimate to the changing times outside of the museum. It's why they aren't super stunned by modern technology or clothing. It's why Lancelot knows that children are ogling and pointing at him during the day. In the same vein, we know the exhibits don't age physically, but mentally, they can, but often don't. I know I keep repeating this, but first and foremost always are the drives and objectives within them that come from the person they're based off of. Then, if faced with external stimuli strong enough, those motivations can shift. It feels like the guards kept up a strict and regular routine, so the exhibits probably didn't face many new things very often, so there's no reason for them to stop trying to do what they're trying to do. Enter Larry. He shakes things up. He brings about new ideas and perspectives and causes the exhibits to think. It causes them to change just a little. It's why everyone can get along now. It's why Jedediah and Octavius became really good, super close best friends for life when they started out hating each other. The only person I am still stuck on, though, is Akhman Ra. It feels a little different for him because he's still himself, not a representation of himself. Akhman Ra is a real body. A real person forever trapped in a 16-year-old's body. And it raises so many ethical questions too, especially because a lot of people ship him with Larry. Is it predatory that this ancient being wants to be with a man in his 30s? Or is it predatory that Larry wants to be in a relationship with what looks like a 16-year-old? It feels wrong to pair Akhman Ra with Larry, but it also feels wrong to pair Akhman Ra with someone like Teenage Nikki, another person people ship Akhman Ra with. It's like a lose-lose for him. It's like the Twilight dilemma. Is that a real thing? Is that a real name? Like the Twilight dilemma? It should be, because this is an example of it. But there's no way Akhman Ra's been coming to life every night since ancient Egypt and hasn't aged mentally. But on all accounts, he still seems like a 16-year-old, just maybe a more matured, well-traveled one. I've thought about it, and I've thought about it, and my friends have thought about it, and I really can't find a good answer for this one. So let me know what you think, because I am thoroughly stumped. Do you ever just take a moment to stop and think about what you're saying or doing? Do you ever just say something that's so chronically online that you just... So what does the tablet bring to life? Paintings can come to life. Statues can come to life. Real bodies can come to life. I mean, the old guards essentially got superpowers after working there for so long. Well, this goes hand in hand with the question of what qualifications a space needs to bring stuff to life. Really, the tablet can be used anywhere. The guards worked there a long time, so if they believe that the tablet would work outside the museum, I believe it too. I mean, Akhman Ra and his family came to life every night inside their tomb, pre-people discovering them and sending them to the museum. The tablet will bring to life things that are significant to the space they inhabit, and it has to be a depiction of something that could be alive. So could it bring a lamp to life? No, lamps can't be alive. Could it bring a quick drawing I did to life, like Doodle Bob? No, it has no significance to anyone or any space. Could it bring to life a drawing that I did that has been in my home for many years and that I have sentimental attachment to? Yes, if it's of something that could be alive. Cars and planes and guns and things of that sort aren't alive, but the tablet brings them to life in their own way, in a way that something not alive can be alive, you know? Essentially, it makes them function as if they were real cars or planes or guns. The catch, at least for weapons, is that the projectiles already have to be made. Like the bullets and arrows already have to exist, the tablet can't conjure them up. Also, this unlocks so much potential for the tablet to be used as an energy source, a clean energy source. Is it clean? I'm gonna put a pin in that one. But either way, if the tablet can power engines, it's not a stretch to say that it can power a building. Like, I wholeheartedly believe the museum saw a dip in energy bills when the tablet arrived. If only a small dip, because the tablet only functions at night, and how much power do they use at night? I don't know. Unfortunately, this means some pretty gruesome stuff could come to life, and that's actually something I don't want to talk about, but it is food for thought. Like, this concept could turn into a horror movie very, very quickly. And once something is brought to life for the first time, it can be brought to life anywhere, though generally it has to be indoors. And I'm already anticipating some questions, so I thought I'd get ahead of the curve. Why did the giant balloon animal come to life in Night at the Museum 2 Battle of the Smithsonian? It's a balloon animal. My response to you is that it is a balloon animal. What about the lions in Trafalgar Square in London in Night at the Museum 3 Secret of the Tomb? You may ask. I'm counting Trafalgar Square because it is a definite area with set boundaries. Like, if you put a roof over it, it would feel like one cohesive area. Same with the Lincoln Memorial in the second film. The tablet definitely has a range, that range being the building or cohesive area it currently resides in. Well, why didn't the Teddy Roosevelt outside the Museum of Natural History come to life when they went outside in the first one? You may ask. Maybe it did. I don't know. We weren't following him. Kylie, how did you come to the conclusion that the tablet brings things to life that are significant to the space they inhabit? You may ask. Because this is the best theory I could come up with that makes sense to my brain and holds up against the inconsistent lore provided to us. And if we really wanted a catch-all that provides an explanation for absolutely everything, for all of the tablet's intricacies and decisions, we can actually pin it on Khonshu, whose magic is imbued in the tablet. Like, it works as an almost Horcrux kind of deal, not to bring up Harry Potter or anything, but part of Khonshu's soul was placed into the tablet to bring it to life. And in that way, it has a mind of its own. It has a conscience. It can make those decisions about what comes to life and what does not. You know what? At this point, I am the lore. Sean Levy who? You better watch out, Robert Ben Garant and Thomas Lennon. You don't know anything. I know it all. I am a god. I am the god of Night at the Museum lore.
I am the tablet.
We know what criteria brings an exhibit to life. What kills it? As far as everyone is aware, the only thing that can truly kill an exhibit is for them to be outside at sunrise. And the only reason we're aware of this is because it had to have happened at some point. Like, how many people do you think overrode their tablet brain and went outside and died before they realized that sunrise equals death? How much do you think the museum freaked out when they lost a lot of their exhibits all of a sudden? So yeah, sunrise kills them. This doesn't mean they can't be broken beyond repair though. Teddy is cut clean in half in the first movie via horse and buggy, cart, whatever, and he's fine. But we fear for Jedediah's life when he's trapped in the hourglass in the second movie. There are two reasons why we being the audience and the characters, feel this fear. The first is that we technically don't know what else can kill them. Maybe the pressure of the sand can. Probably not, but like, why chance it when you can fix it, you know? Like, a great white shark probably won't kill you, but why free dive with them when you can just cage dive or not dive at all? This is a terrible example because I would love to dive with sharks, but you get the idea. When Teddy jumped in front of the cart to save Sacagawea, nobody was thinking, they were just acting. Nobody was thinking about the consequences or whether it would kill Teddy or not. The hourglass gives us time to think. The second reason for our fear is a bit more brutal. Like I said, the weight of the sand probably won't kill Jedediah, but he's small and very lightweight, and the sand might crush him. It won't kill him, but it will cause Out to live his existence miserably in the form of a disfigured lump of whatever he's made of. Teddy's injury is fixable. Like he says, Sacagawea, a little hot wax, he's as good as new. The only thing that can kill an exhibit is the sun. Oh my god, do you think if the exhibit is marred in a way that makes their quality of life unbearable, do you think they, like, euthanize them? Like, lay them out to watch the sunrise for the first and last time ever and they make it a whole thing? Oh my god, that's awful. I would like to talk about something else now. The real meat and potatoes. The cream of the crop. The part you've all been waiting for. The Night at the Museum multiverse. Let's take a look at the paintings. They come to life, yes? We could look at them the same way we look at regular exhibits, if not for this one mid-credit scene in the second movie that's supposed to be oh so silly, ha-ha, but it actually throws a major wrench in everything. During the actual movie, Larry and Amelia Earhart jump into that black and white photo from the end of World War II with the sailor kissing the girl. They're trying to escape Common Ra's army, and Larry accidentally drops his cell phone when he runs into this guy. They have a brief chat, Larry runs away, and the guy calls after him saying, "Hey mister, you forgot your, what is this thing?" Haha, the end, right? Wrong. As the credits start to roll, we are treated to a mid-credit scene in black and white. It's the same guy, and he's tinkering with the phone, and we hear someone in the background, what I assume is his mother, yell, "Joey Motorola, you better," whatever, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, Motorola, like the cell phone company. And by the way, Joey Motorola was not a real person. One of the founders' names was Joseph Galvin, and Wikipedia did lead me to believe that Motorola had a hand in pioneering cell phones. So like, are we implying that Larry Daly caused a time loop paradox deal that led to the invention of cell phones? And if true, this would imply that the tablet, via paintings, has time travel capabilities. And if it's not time travel, then this means the tablet, via paintings, has interdimensional travel capabilities. Because Larry either accidentally aided in the invention of cell phones in real life or in this painting world. This is kind of anticlimactic because both the time travel theory and interdimensional travel theory are valid. I just prefer the multidimensional travel theory because it's cooler, and also it's funnier to say that Night at the Museum has a multiverse. In all seriousness though, we already know that the tablet can open gateways into other worlds, like the Duat in Egypt. It also lets us avoid the time loop paradox because I am not a huge fan of those. And if there are boundaries to the insides of these paintings, it would almost feel less cruel somehow. Because if it's another dimension, that's just how big the dimension's always been, and that's all they've ever known. Like, yeah, that's the black and white World War II New York dimension where everybody's accustomed to it always being black and white World War II New York. If it's our world in the past though, they'd be confined to this one time and place for all of eternity, knowing there's more out there. Beyond World War II, beyond New York, beyond this one moment. Even if there are no borders to the painting, the people would still be stuck in this Groundhog Day-like time loop, even if they can go anywhere. But again, if it's a different dimension, say the black and white World War II New York dimension, that's just their life, baby. When Larry and Amelia hop in, they're able to go beyond the borders of the painting, and we see Joey Motorola living in his room, also beyond the borders of the painting. Each painting then is different in terms of where their boundaries are, following the intent and style of the creator and of the painting itself. So photographs might have no boundaries at all, whereas some paintings have no boundaries or far out boundaries, or some might have small boundaries. But then sometimes you have a print like Relativity by M.C. Escher, and it looks like it just falls into an abyss, but it's actually one continuous loop. So when Teddy falls into that abyss, he's able to circle back around, but potentially you could end up falling forever. But this makes sense because relativity is very abstract. Lastly, the tablet is able to control everything in the museum if you know the right command, as we've seen in all versions of the movie. In the script, Cecil is even able to control Larry. So this thing is insanely powerful. The person in me who wants to assume the best of people thinks that Akhman-Ra's family probably didn't use the tablet for much else before their death. If they did, it would be to open a portal to the Duat to raise warriors to fight for Egypt or the royal family or whatever. Or they would use it to bring people back to life as servants and warriors. Or if we want to assume the absolute worst, Morankare would use it to literally control people. It said he knew the ins and outs of the tablet better than anyone, but I really do think, because it was a gift for Akhman-Ra, that at most they just used it to raise bird warriors. It's pretty cool that the tablet can be reprogrammed despite being engraved in gold, as Akhman-Ra said his parents changed the combination on him. They did this because he would use the powers of the tablet to try to rule. I mean, he's a jealous older brother. Of course he'd try to use the tablet to raise warriors to overtake his parents and brother. Of course he would use it to control people. Because he's evil. Well, that about sums up the lore of the Tablet of Akhman-Ra. I'm sure I've missed a bunch, so if you have any questions or arguments, comment them down below, and maybe I'll address them in the next video. If I have any brain cells left after this. Okay, the fandom. Specifically, Tumblr and AO3. Unfortunately, there's not a lot going on today, but there's still something, like it's still kicking in the year of our Lord 2022. And it's kind of silly because I joined around the time the third movie came out in 2014, which is when I think a lot of people joined, but it was still alive prior to that. And every once in a while, the fandom will rise from the depths again via some random piece of media that comes out. Recently, it was the TV show Loki. Owen Wilson starred in it, and the concept is that there are different timelines, so there can be multiple versions of yourself, which means there were jokes about Owen Wilson's character, Mobius, meeting different versions of himself, like Lightning McQueen, like Hansel from Zoolander, like Jedediah. Cue the Night at the Museum fandom, awakening from the grave to talk about the exact same things they did in 2014, but this time we add the multiple timelines aspect. Also, they visit Pompeii in Loki, just like they do in Night at the Museum 3. You know, if I had a nickel for every time Owen Wilson visited Pompeii with his queer bestie,
I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice, right?
Even more recently, the show Moon Knight came out, and everyone from the fandom was quick to wake up and point out how it was basically Night at the Museum, kind of. Ordinary awkward guy, down on his luck, works in a museum. A bunch of dead stuff comes to life thanks to an Egyptian deity, specifically Khonshu. You know, like how the tablet brings things to life via the moon god Khonshu. So the Night at the Museum fandom appeared to say, hey, remember me? So what happens in the Night at the Museum fandom? What happens in the Night at the Museum tag on Tumblr? What happens in the Night at the Museum section on AO3? Well, mostly shipping. And most of the fanfics have this 2012, all of the Avengers live in the Avengers Tower and do family things together kind of vibe, which I am a sucker for. They just generally vibe around the museum.
I'm a vibe guy.
And go on wacky misadventures, and the core of the stories usually revolve around a ship. The main ship that we all know and love is Jedtavious, or Jedediah and Octavius. I think this one is the most obvious because boy do the people of this movie love to queerbait. Roughly half of the stories on AO3 are about this pairing, and most of the Tumblr tag is filled with stuff about them. There's a lot of confessing their love for each other, there's a lot of tiny people do adventure things, there's a lot of AUs, or alternative universes, where they're regular, normal-sized people and it has nothing to do with the museum. The angst, the fluff, it's all there. Like, I want to read to you some quotes from Steve Coogan and Owen Wilson. First, from Steve Coogan. There was a certain kind of subtext, what those of a discerning view might read as a subtle homoerotic subtext. If those people read that into it, I certainly wouldn't argue with it. Yes, Octavius has a certain fascination with Jedediah because he wouldn't meet people as irreverent as that in the world of the Roman Empire. So that slightly gauche, throwaway attitude that goes with being a cowboy fascinates Octavius, and he finds it quite alluring. And then, from Owen Wilson. My role as Jedediah and my friendship with Octavius has changed a lot, because in the beginning, we weren't friends, we were actually mortal enemies. There's been a big sort of transition from that antagonism and bickering flowed into almost a love, although they'd never admit it. Like, I know they can't say, yes, gay, because, I don't know, straight men, whatever, but like... Also, we cannot forget the classic red and blue theming. The red Oni, blue Oni trope is when there are two characters who are strongly linked, and this can be via rivalry, friendship, love, or something else. One character's red and the other is blue. The red character is usually fiery and impulsive, while the blue one is calmer and more intellectual. This can always be switched, like with Jedediah and Octavius. Other examples include Iron Man and Captain America, Korra and Asami, Jedi and Sith, Romeo and Juliet, Shark Boy and Lava Girl. Just something to keep in mind. Also, look at this. The next most popular ship, according to AO3, is Larry Daly and Akhman Ra, known as Tablet Guardians. And oh boy, the ethics on this one had me and my friends spiraling for days. I feel like it was a major source of discourse in the fandom, because people called it predatory both ways, others said it balances out, and others still said who gives a shit, it's Night at the Museum. I personally agree with the third option, I don't really think it matters. Maybe it's a way for me to avoid having to make a decision, but in the end, I think it's a harmless ship with a few factors that make it interesting. Like the way Larry promises to the Jackals that he'll watch out for Akhman Ra, and then he keeps that promise the whole trilogy. Like the way Akhman Ra is attached to Larry from the start, after Larry literally freed him from the prison he's been trapped in for 50 years. Akhman Ra says he's forever in Larry's debt, and like we mentioned before, Akhman Ra sees the kindness in Larry before any of the other exhibits do. Even in the script, there's a line, he doesn't say, "Will we see you again tomorrow?" He says, "Will I see you tomorrow?" Additionally, Akhman Ra acknowledges Larry's authority despite being owner of the tablet and literally pharaoh. There's got to be a lot of respect there at the very least. And Larry's awkwardness makes this kind of cute, both in their first introduction and in a bit in the third movie. Also, check out this little YouTube promo clip for the third movie.
Happy holidays, Larry. Oh, thanks. It's the scepter of the sun god. It's been in my family for over 4,000 years. Wow.
Got you a little something.
Oh, thank you.
It's a neck pillow.
Right.
I left the tag on there.
There's not really much here. I'm just gonna say I like the idea behind this ship, but I can't say that I'd like it in real life, you know? Because this is totally a thing that would happen in real life. From there we move on to Teddy Roosevelt and Sacagawea. We already talked about this ship and how it's a little problematic, but just kind of convenient. And nobody really sets out to write a fic about this couple. They're just always a background couple, sometimes having things to do, sometimes not. Sometimes they're used as a way for another character to get jealous of their perfect relationship. Like, the movie just throws this couple at us and everyone's like, yeah, sure, whatever, they're here, they're in love, yeah. Anyway, back to the gay cowboy and Roman. Other pairings include Akhman-Ra/Reader and Akhman-Ra/original character. These are obviously popular because he's a Rami Malek, so like, yeah, me too. But for real, he's a young, attractive character who has the potential to be written with so much angst and hurt from his traumatic past, and God if Tumblr doesn't eat that shit up. According to AO3, the next most popular ships are Akhman-Ra/Lancelot from the third movie and Napoleon Bonaparte/Al Capone from the second movie. And I do see people ship these couples on Tumblr, but I think there are a lot more popular ones, namely Nikki/Reader, Nikki/original character, and Nikki/Akhman-Ra. And when we say Nikki, we mean third movie Nikki, 17 to 18-year-old Nikki, which their physical bodies are similar in age, which is good, but Akhman-Ra's a billion years old, and we run into the same ethical dilemma we did with the Tablet Guardians ship. I have the same feelings about this ship that I do the Tablet Guardians. Cute, has potential, but probably not ideal in real life. There's a few more that we can talk about later once we know these characters, but if you're interested ahead of time, they are Ivan the Terrible/Al Capone, Ivan the Terrible/Napoleon, Larry/Amelia Earhart, Larry/Lancelot, Nikki/Lancelot, not a fan, and Akhman-Ra/Common Ra. Also not a fan. Lancelot is also sometimes used as a jealousy tool in Jedediah's fics because he too is a blonde-haired, blue-eyed, handsome man like Jedediah. I wanted to point out this image my coworker found when I was explaining Night at the Museum lore to him. He seemed interested because a lot of people know these movies as movies from their childhood that are just movies. But then to hear that there's a whole ass fandom and lore and everything is like, what? Anyway, my coworker started looking up stuff and he came across this image on DeviantArt by Jack X Angelica Forever. And then somebody kind of important at our job walked in and my coworker just left it up full screen. I don't think the person noticed, or at least he was kind enough to pretend not to. I found this one by KittyLover776, which was super interesting. But of course, I had to indulge and make my own. Here's a quick explanation. Larry and Rebecca are not romantic in my head, but if they were, I'm not gonna be upset. If you look at me with that Larry/Dexter pairing, it is on sight. I think the idea of Napoleon and Al Capone together is so silly, so I'm just like, why not? And if you add Ivan in and make it a throuple, even sillier. But Ivan individually with either of these guys, I don't really care. Teddy and Sacagawea, I just feel kind of resigned at this point. Like, sure, I guess. It's not great, but whatever. Anyway, send me yours. There will be a blank template down below. That's really all I have to say about the fandom because it mostly revolves around ships. There's wonderful stories and wonderful works of art out there across multiple platforms. I'm just lazy and only looked at Tumblr and AO3. And somehow, despite no new content coming out since the year of our Lord 2014, this fandom continues to not only survive, but sometimes, just sometimes, thrive. When researching this movie a little bit, I came across a few Christian websites that were like, is Night at the Museum good for kids? And the general consensus was, yeah, it has really good morals, but it does promote paganism and the theory of evolution.
Who's evolved?
I am.
Who's evolved?
I am.
This little creature is your primate brother. Without him, there's no us.
One website was even like, a divorced woman does live with her fiance, so... What? The Christian websites did get one thing right, and that's that this movie has good morals. Interesting morals, even. Because I feel like with most kids' movies, you get the follow your dreams, be true to yourself, that's what makes you great. But Night at the Museum kind of does the opposite. Larry's dreams rapidly change to fit his idea of greatness, and his self is a little selfish and unmotivated. So the movie says, take responsibility, be the best version of yourself. That's what makes you great. We touched on this a bit in Larry's characterization, but I just want to re-emphasize that I am aware not everyone has the same opportunities, and sometimes you can only give 10%. That's okay. I just wanted to triple check that we all know this and understand this before we move on. Larry's super objective, his overall objective in life, is to be great. His current objective, his way to achieve that, is to invent something amazing, to become an amazing inventor. We'll talk about this a little bit more in the second movie, but we don't actually even know if inventing makes Larry happy. I feel like he wants to be an inventor in the same way that I want to be in a blockbuster movie. There aren't any real specifics, and it's less about doing the thing. It's more about being remembered and leaving a mark. My moment is coming, I just know it. I say this as I continue to not send out auditions or network with anyone. Larry says this as he rapidly changes his ideas and continuously gives up on inventions that don't pan out right away. The thing is, there isn't a moment. Like, yeah, the climax of the movie occurs when Larry has to find his way out of Akhman-Ra's temple and Teddy literally says, this is your moment or whatever. Everything culminates to this point, But for Larry and his growth, it's been a series of moments, a number of changes he was consistently making. And I hate to be the person that says, well, a little hard work will get you there, because sometimes it won't. Sometimes Butthole McFartface over there just has more money than you do, so he can do more things than you, and buy more things than you, and climb the ladder of success way faster than you without working at all. But there is truth to the statement that you have to work to achieve something. I can't star in my blockbuster movie if I don't send out auditions. Larry can't invent the next big thing if he moves on after one setback. And I get it, I lose steam so easily all the time too. It's so easy to jump from thing to thing without ever getting deeply invested. I mean, I was scared that I'd give up on this essay after 50 pages. Because what if you fail? What if you fail at the thing that is supposed to make you great? That means you are not great, and you never will be. You will never have your moment or amount to anything. And I think these fears are perfectly summed up in the words Nicky says to his dad.
What if you're wrong? And you're just an ordinary guy who should get a job.
Soul-crushing. But we have a responsibility, especially if we want to be great, to put time and effort into ourselves, into the things we want to achieve, and into the people we love. Speaking of, this mentality is so damaging to the people we love. It's implied that Erica divorced Larry because he couldn't get his head out of the clouds.
I'm a vibe guy.
He couldn't lower himself to getting a real job because he had to focus on his moment. But this resulted in a lifestyle in which he couldn't afford to take care of his family. And I'm not saying take care of because he's a man, I'm saying he could never support his weight and he didn't even try to. Even after the divorce, he bounced from place to place. He didn't learn from the divorce. It does make him feel guilty though, because he loves them. His vision of greatness just overshadows that love, and that's something Larry has to work on to overcome. Plus, this idea of not taking a regular job because I'm made for something greater, it's rooted in this individualistic, capitalistic, self-important worldview. Like I said, we all want to be remembered, be great, leave our mark, but when you have the attitude of, I don't want to be a night guard, that's beneath me, it's like, oh, so you're more important than people who want to be night guards, who are night guards. You're better than them? What makes you so special? And I know that's a brutal way to put it, but it's something that helps me too. I'm a failure because I haven't moved to New York for theater yet. Oh, so your friend who's doing shows in Michigan, she's a failure too, because she didn't move to New York. What makes you so special? Why do you think you should be held to a higher standard than your friend? Because you're better? No. Larry's attitude towards working jobs that are beneath him is just belittling to those who do work quote-unquote survival jobs, but it's kind of reflective of our society as a whole. Oh, and there's so much importance placed on suffering. The idea that we have to suffer for our art, like literally the starving artist trope. You can't be a real artist unless you felt true pain. And this also plays into why Larry can't hold a job. This is even more prevalent in the draft of the script, where Larry's trying to write a book, so he needs to be on the outskirts. He needs to isolate himself and observe from the outside so that he can write a good book. In both this draft and in the finished movie, becoming a night guard to Larry feels like giving up, acknowledging that you're just ordinary. Insert the museum. Insert the plot of the movie. Through events we've already discussed and character developments we've already covered, Larry learns a lot. Most importantly, he learns the ways in which he is great. And after this giant rant about greatness and what it is not, I am sorry to say I don't have an exact definition for what it is. Because it looks different to everyone. But I feel like there are a few characteristics most people can agree on. Larry learns compassion. He actively wants to make sure everyone can still come to life at night. He wants to protect them. He wants them to have a good time, not stay locked up every night. He bonds with Nicky and becomes a really good role model for his son. Larry learns to be confident. You can feel this one. He stumbles over his words way less by the end of the movie. The museum-wide party at the end would have stressed old Larry out, but he's calm, cool, and collected. He's watching his son ride a T-Rex, and that snap at the end that causes the blackout, oozing with confidence. Larry learns to persevere. How many times did he try to give up only to throw himself right back into the chaos, give it one last shot? Even if it took a little shove, he knew he was doing something that mattered. So no matter how difficult the exhibits got, he adjusted accordingly and tried again. Larry learns to be inventive. He ties the bone to the remote-controlled car for Rexy, he uses the baby keys to trick Dexter, he has a heart-to-heart with Attila that allows them to be good friends, and he thinks to open the sarcophagus when he and Nicky are trapped in the tomb. And that's the thing. Larry's been an inventor this whole time. He just wasn't directing that energy in the right direction, pushing it into inventions that he thought would make him great. Instead, he now translates that inventiveness, that creativity, into saving a museum and all of its inhabitants. No matter how you define greatness, at the end of the day, it's a choice. Nobody is inherently great. Nobody wakes up with greatness seeping out of them, despite what Teddy says. You have to choose to exhibit good traits. You have to work, and it's exhausting sometimes. It's comforting in a way, but that also means you won't randomly wake up one day and become great. You won't have your moment. But by all accounts, Teddy seems this way. Teddy seems to have been born great despite his debilitating asthma or whatever the f***. Please don't come for me, I too have asthma. Larry has greatness thrust upon him, but Teddy has to make that choice every day. Because as we've discussed, even the great Theodore Roosevelt has insecurities. He can't tell Sacagawea he loves her. He can't seem to kill the woolly mammoth. He's not even the real Theodore Roosevelt. But despite all of this, he actively chooses to be brave and helpful, and he chooses to uphold his morals in the face of adversity. So yeah, greatness isn't being remembered. But I think that theme is so interesting in the context of the museum, because museums are literally about being remembered. They're about history and legacy. Larry is surrounded by famous things all night, every night, and I wouldn't blame him if that was even a small part of why he didn't want to work there initially. When they come to life though, this fact doesn't seem to bother Larry as much, because all of these people stood for something great. They're remembered for being great, but when he meets them, they're just people. In fact, they're thoroughly flawed people. Honestly, they get on his nerves so much that he's like, alright, who the f*** are these guys? F***ing Octavius? Who the f*** does he think he is? Roman general, whatever the f***. Sure. And it kind of helps alleviate this pressure he's built up and placed on himself. Because Larry is a flawed guy, but so is Teddy Roosevelt, our literal 26th president of the United States. So is Attila the Hun, a powerful ruler and ruthless warrior. And so are all of these other famous, great exhibits. And on an even broader scale, this reflects history itself. These civilizations and events we hold in such high regard, they too were flawed. I mean, we can and absolutely should study and learn from history, but maybe let's not idolize and romanticize it, because despite being great, it was also kind of weird and f***ed up. So yeah, maybe Larry can relax a smidge. Also, a lot of these people probably didn't realize how much their legacy would impact the world. I mean, there was no way Sacagawea knew she would be one of the most recognizable Native American women from the 1800s. Similarly, there's no way Larry knows how much he means to the people around him. And that's a funny thing that I think reflects on all humans. We remember these people by what history tells us, so we build them up to be these big, important historical figures. And yeah, a lot of them did have some level of influence over the course of history, but like, it's easy to forget that they're real people who lived real lives. And that's why I think the tablet pulls from this collective conscience we have of a historical figure to make an exhibit, because the characters we see reflect just that. The exhibits are their stories. This means that the story people choose to tell will determine how you will be remembered. It won't be your thoughts, your desires, your beliefs, it will be what others think is important. And that's neither a good nor a bad thing. Sometimes you'll be remembered for all of your flaws, other times you'll be glorified. It just can't be a completely accurate picture. I mean, the whole concept of Night at the Museum mirrors this so well. These exhibits get to literally live on forever thanks to the Tablet of Akhmun-Ra, but outside the museum, out in the world, they live on in a different way. They live on through their story. That was a lot of themes packed into one giant but there's another one I want to talk about, and it's a lot more lighthearted, and honestly, there's not a lot to it. Not to sound like Disney, but becoming an adult, that doesn't mean the magic has to end. We've talked endlessly now about how Larry needed to take responsibility and essentially grow up, but the movie almost presents two different kinds of growing up. You can grow up. You can be a responsible adult that does responsible adult things. You can become a bond trader like Don. You don't believe in a magic glowing tablet like Nikki and Rebecca. You can take things too seriously like Dr. McPhee. Or you learn that becoming a responsible adult doesn't mean you have to stop having fun. Maybe it's even more fun. Because once Larry gets his together, once he finally gets a job and learns to become a leader, he can bring the museum together and now they can party every night if they want. Yeah, there's a magic glowing tablet, and it's cool as way cooler than these half-baked ideas he came up with just to say he did something. And he's like the guardian of this tablet. He gets to talk to historical figures every single night. So yeah, we learn alongside Larry that you can be an adult, you can grow up, but you can still believe in magic. The last theme I'd like to discuss is one of found family. I mean, what a ragtag crew of wildly different but equally chaotic and engaging individuals. A good chunk of these exhibits don't have their actual family or friends with them from when they were alive. They come from all different walks of life, so after waking up in a museum and being faced with the frighteningly unfamiliar with nobody that they know to support them, they lash out and fight each other. They protect their own way of life. Only after Larry do they learn that they're not so different. The obvious example is Jedediah and Octavius, but also Columbus and Attila learn to bond over soccer. Pretty much everyone realizes that Akhman-Ra is just a kid, not some scary undead monster. All of the exhibits have these small things in common, but the big thing is that they have the museum. They get to live forever and make new friendships and learn new things about different cultures and time periods. They protect each other. They grow into a family. This is why I think Larry never really ends up with a love interest, despite it being teased a couple of times. Though he has Nikki, his family structure is essentially dismantled. He grows and learns to love in a way that isn't romantic, and I think there's something super special about that, especially from your generic 2006 family comedy. Just as the exhibits find family in each other, Larry also finds family in them too. While he's learning to parent Nikki, he's also learning to parent a whole museum. These guys are a little unconventional and chaotic, and they didn't really have anyone on their side, just like Larry. Now Larry has people to support him, and the exhibits have someone fighting for them. Isn't that just the sweetest? I just wanted to include a brief news section to keep you up to date on all things Night at the Museum coming out into the world. And you'd think since the last movie came out in 2014 and it wrapped things up very nicely that we'd be
donezo.
Well, you'd be wrong. We are indeed getting a fourth movie, Kamen-Ra Rises Again, an animated sequel to Battle of the Smithsonian. It's about Nick reluctantly taking on the position of the night guard at the Museum of Natural History, and believe it or not, Kamen-Ra returns. He rises. Again. But this time in New York. It's going to be directed by Matt Danner and star Joshua Bassett as Nick. And I'm not super up to date on pop culture, but I do know he's pretty popular right now. Also, we've got screenwriter Thomas Lennon as the voice of Teddy. The rest of the cast will be new, no original people returning to do the voices, and it's set to come out in December of 2022. We didn't have a release date for the longest time, but I knew it was December. All the other ones are December. It's always marketed as a family holiday movie. I sure do have mixed feelings on this. Like 100%, it is not a good idea. But I cannot lie, I am so jazzed. Like, I live for this content. But we will wait and see and give it a fair shot when it comes out.
Editing Kylie here. At the time of filming the video, we didn't have an exact release date, and we also didn't have that preview image of Nick with Rexy. Now that we have that image, and now that we know it's December 9th, ignore any previous skepticism I had. I have never been more excited for anything else in my life. We are counting down the days until December 9th.
Unfortunately, due to the hellscape that is the era of streaming, they took Night at the Museum 2, Battle of the Smithsonian, and only Night at the Museum 2, Battle of the Smithsonian off of Disney Plus because of some contract bullshit. So now it's on Starz for however long, despite its sequel about to drop in T-minus 2 months on Disney Plus. Additionally, it was rumored that Night at the Museum would be getting a staged musical adaptation with music written by Alan Menken, the guy who did These Things. There hasn't been much news on this recently, especially with the pandemic, so I took it upon myself to message Mr. Menken on Twitter and say, hey, is this a real thing that is still happening? And much to my surprise, he replied and said, yes, this is a real thing that is still happening. I cannot express how excited I am about this. But apparently not everyone shares that same sentiment, because when I look at reactions to this news, it's always,
this is a terrible idea. How do you turn Night at the Museum into a musical? It would be so dumb.
But you know what? Everyone said that about Groundhog Day, and that musical's f***ing excellent. So, yeah, so that's about all that's going on right now.
Moving on.
As we start to wrap things up, I just wanted to throw a few last thoughts at you. If you cannot tell by now, I really genuinely enjoy this movie and its sequels. I've seen it so many times that I can critique just about everything. Like, I'm aware of its flaws, but flaws are so much easier to talk about than strengths. I also tend to downplay how much I like things so as to not seem
obsessive.
I was scared that after finishing this essay, I'd be completely Night at the Museum'd out. I assumed I'd want nothing to do with this trilogy for like the rest of my life. But my fears were unfounded because now I have more Night at the Museum brain rot than ever. So what about these movies has me in a chokehold? Night at the Museum is such a fun and original concept, despite being based off of a book. And though it's clearly made for children, if the slapstick is any indication, it can also be genuinely enjoyed by adults, too. It doesn't feel like you're getting a life lesson shoved down your throat, but the themes are still valuable, the plot is heartwarming, and the characters are engaging and interesting. I understand that it's got a really awkward sense of humor, and that especially exists within Larry.
I just thought that was... I just was laughing in agreement. Happy monkey.
He creates so many uncomfortable situations just by speaking, and I get that that kind of humor is not for everyone, but god is it my bread and butter. This movie gets better and funnier every single time you watch it. Also, the score for Night at the Museum? Insane. Gorgeous. I could recognize it anywhere and it just gives you this feeling of, the opening credits with the 3D gold text and the grandiose music behind it, a feeling like none other. Go open Spotify and listen to it right now. Actually, the opening credits weren't always like that. Originally, you just kind of jumped into the action with Larry in the car, but Levy wanted to establish the museum early on, and I'm so glad they did that because it's so pretty. Near the beginning of the video, we mentioned briefly that museums are both good and bad things, and the movies tend to gloss over the bad bits. What I will say though is that when I first watched these movies way back when, it got me so invested in history. I wanted to learn more about the world around me and the people that came before me, and it seemed to have that effect on a lot of people because after the first movie came out, attendance at the real Museum of Natural History was boosted by something like 20%. Not that they were really struggling. Learning about history is a good thing, and while museums aren't always the most objective source on the planet, they, alongside with these movies, are an excellent jumping off point to make history feel exciting and interesting. Also, the tablet is vague. The world building and rules of the museum are vague. And that's a good thing. Don't get me wrong, I love Star Wars, but when I gotta do a deep dive to remember a glop from one episode of Rebels so I can understand one episode of Boba Fett, it's exhausting. Like, there's so much complex lore, and a lot of it is fun, but sometimes I want to turn my brain off. Sometimes I just want to look and say, ooh, that tablet bring cute Pharaoh to life. Those miniatures are gay. And because of this, you have room to imagine and explore. You can make the movie what you want it to be. Because let me tell you, I had so much more fun researching what little lore we're given to make a cohesive picture. If I just had to research the lore itself, what fun is that? It's like a puzzle. Oh my god, it was originally called The Puzzle of Akhmen-Ra. Maybe that's why. It's a puzzle for the audience. Maybe the real puzzle of Akhmen-Ra was the movie lore we made along the way. And yeah, not having an explanation for absolutely everything makes the movie magical, so much more approachable and whimsical. In all seriousness though, everybody involved in this movie seemed to care about the work they were making. Granted, there are plot holes aplenty, but watching the trilogy and listening to Sean Levy speak about the experience, it's easy to tell that they were having fun and really wanted to make a story that was worth telling. I'm so bad at conclusions. Like, I just talked about one movie for hours on end, and now I just kind of want to abruptly end it and say, okay, bye. Start working on the second movie. Go touch some grass or something. I guess now would be an excellent time to admit I don't know if it's Sean Levy or Sean Levy. Every interviewer I've listened to says it differently, so I took a shot in the dark. I'm very sorry if I got it wrong, Mr. Levy/Mr. Levy. And if you made it all the way here, let me know what Larry Daly you are down in the comments below. And also, thank you so much. This was a massive undertaking that I'm kind of proud of, and I hope you enjoyed at least some of it. Also, major thank you to all of these people who put up with my constant ramblings and helped me through the process of making this video. Thank you, thank you, thank you again, and I will see you once more when we return for Night at the Museum 2, Battle of the Smithsonian. You know, I hope all of my lore that I worked very, very hard on building doesn't get completely dismantled by one tiny passing detail in the new movie because somebody did not care enough to check for continuity. You know who Butthole McFartface is? It's Dawn. Dawn is the embodiment of Butthole McFartface.